Netanyahu went on to say, quote, the first phase ends by the destruction of the majority of the enemy forces, and, quote, we will restore security to the citizens of Israel, and we will win. CNN's Hadas Gold joins me now live from Jerusalem. Hadas, thanks so much for joining us. What's the latest?
Well, Jake, we are still receiving reports of intermittent rocket fire from Gaza towards Israel, although they have slowed down quite dramatically compared to what we were experiencing just about 20 hours ago when there were such regular air raid sirens here in Jerusalem. We had at least 5 or 6 rounds and had rockets exploding overhead here, but it's been quieter for those in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, but there's still activity going on in southern Israel. Just in the last hour or so, the Israeli police have confirmed that the militants in Sderot, which is a town right on the Gaza border, that situation has been cleared. They were holed up apparently in the police station there. This had been an hours-long gun battle with the militants there. The police have now said that they have secured Sderot. It is not clear yet whether the Israeli authorities have cleared all of the Israeli towns and villages near the Gaza border that had militant infiltrations. This has been their number one priority, is to clear all of the militants, because as we've been hearing and seeing from residents there, is just the harrowing experiences of militants, which may have been hundreds of militants, entering Israel, infiltrating these towns, shooting randomly, indiscriminately on the street, going into houses, holding hostages, and even taking some Israeli civilians, we also know soldiers are among those as well, hostage and back into Gaza. We don't know an exact number of how many of these hostages were taken into Gaza, but they are likely to be in the dozens. The Israeli officials have not confirmed a number. We know that Hamas says they've taken them to strategic locations across the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is conducting airstrikes on Gaza. We've seen several buildings that have been destroyed by these airstrikes. The Israeli military has told some civilians in Gaza to leave certain areas and seek shelter elsewhere. We know that tens of thousands of Israeli military reservists have been called up. No indication that a ground incursion has happened yet, but I can't imagine a scenario where there won't be some sort of activity on the ground. I can't imagine this will all be conducted from the air as we have seen in previous conflicts, because we're at a different level of war here, and because there are Israeli civilians and soldiers, some children as young as 3 years old, who are allegedly being held by Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also announcing that in addition to this going to be a long and potentially drawn-out war, they've also decided to cut off electricity to the Gaza Strip. Israel provides most of the electricity to the Gaza Strip. This is obviously as part of an effort to try to hinder the militants' operation, but it also, of course, affects the civilians there as well. The death toll on both sides is in the hundreds. The injuries are in the thousands, and we expect those to rise for both Israelis and Palestinians over the coming hours and days.
All right, that's Gold in Jerusalem. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Tonight, as casualties climb in Israel, Iran.
Hamas. Those fucking cowards.
Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei posted this disgusting.
You hear that, Hamas? You're a bunch of fucking cowards, is what you are.
The Zionist regime will be eradicated at the hands of the Palestinian people and the resistance forces throughout the region. He did that with a video of Palestinian terrorists, Hamas, attacking, if memory serves, attendees of a peace concert. Attending, again, this revolting, the words of Iran's supreme leader. Thousands of Iranians gathered on the streets of Tehran to celebrate the bloodshed, celebrate the innocent civilians murdered, as Iranian state media showed. Parliament members cheering death to Israel. Obviously, that does not represent the Iranian people writ large, who are in many ways prisoners in their own country. But it is also true that long-held hatred of Israel has only grown as Israel has inched towards normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia in a U.S.-backed deal that would have been troublesome for Iran. Iran is Shiite and the Saudis are Sunni, and those two sects are at odds quite often. As the Washington Post's Max Boot noted earlier today, quote, indeed, while we don't know for sure why Hamas chose to strike exactly now, this could well be part of a larger attempt by Iran and its proxies, including Hamas, to prevent a historic reconciliation between Jerusalem and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Max Boot is also a senior fellow for the Council on Foreign Relations. He joins us now. Max, thanks so much for joining us. So U.S. officials say it is still too early to say definitively if Iran was directly involved in this attack. But we do know that Iran funds and arms Hamas. We know that Iran does not like the idea of Israel and Saudi Arabia forming any sort of diplomatic alliance. Put this into the larger perspective, if you could.
Well, the larger perspective is that, Jake, is that you basically have two blocks competing for power and influence in the Middle East. On the one hand, you have Iran and the so-called Shiite Crescent with its proxies being very prominent in Iraq, being very prominent in Syria, being very prominent in Yemen, and also, of course, in the Palestinian territory, and in particular, Hamas receives major support in arms and money from Iran. And on the other side, you have Israel and the Sunni states, especially the Saudis and the Emiratis, with U.S. backing, who are very much attempting to contain Iranian influence and power. And that is what is responsible for this historic reconciliation, which has already happened between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain, and that is now in the process of occurring between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But clearly, Iran, with its brutal proxy wars, is able to basically gum up the works, and that's what they're trying to do, I think, right now, is to prevent that reconciliation by creating this horrific war in Israel's backyard that will inflame the entire region.
Iran obviously arms and funds Hamas, wanting Hamas to carry out terrorist attacks. I'm not sure of this relationship, how much Iran would know in terms of the details, what Hamas was planning on carrying out. What can you tell us about that? Would Hamas say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing, or is it more just like a relationship where Iran just gives them the funds and expects that they will use the funds for no good?
Well, in general, I think Iran does provide the funds and munitions and expects them to be used for no good. For a major operation like this, my guess would be that the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, probably was involved in planning and signing off for this. They certainly exercise a fair amount of control over organizations like Hezbollah, I think less so over Hamas, but nevertheless there is a substantial relationship. But again, we can talk about Iranian complicity, but the question is, Jake, what do you do about it? And of course, we already have a lot of sanctions on Iran. We could try tightening those sanctions, but the reality, as we've found in the last few decades, is that it doesn't take that much money to sponsor terrorism. You're never going to be able to cut off all the money that Iran uses to support these extremist groups. And of course, the only other option you're really left with is then to go to war with Iran, which is the last thing that anybody wants.
You point to a 2017 RAND study in your column today, noting how Israel wanted to deter Hamas from attacking, but not to the point where Israel was willing to topple Hamas, the regime. What was the calculation then? And I assume this war, what happened this morning, changes that calculation.
I would assume so. I mean, up until now, the Israeli calculation has been that they will retaliate for Hamas attacks, but they don't want to go to the extent of actually destroying Hamas because they don't know what's going to come after Hamas. And basically, the Israeli security establishment position has been that better the devil you know than some other devil that may come along down the road. And their concern has been that if Hamas is not there, you could have an even more militant organization, hard as that may be to believe, but there are even crazier organizations like Al-Qaeda that could take over, or you could have just sheer chaos, or in some ways the worst thing from the Israeli perspective is to have to go back in and to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, because of course Israel evacuated Gaza in 2005, and most Israelis have no desire for another costly and brutal occupation. But if you destroy Hamas and there is no effective authority over the Gaza Strip, somebody has to rule, and unfortunately the Palestinian Authority is probably too weak to do that. The Egyptians, Jordanians, Saudis, they're not going to, I don't see them providing troops, and certainly not working with the Israelis to pacify Gaza. And so basically, at the end of the day, Israel is going to be left with this terrible dilemma, and whatever military operations they undertake, yeah, they can militarily defeat Hamas. There's no question that the Israeli Defense Forces are going to be much stronger than Hamas. There's going to be horrible, terrible, brutal fighting that's going to go on, and there will be heavy casualties on both sides. At the end of the day, I don't doubt that the Israelis will prevail tactically and militarily, but then the issue becomes, now what? How do they create any kind of peace and order going forward in Gaza if they completely eliminate Hamas? That has been basically the question which has held Israel back in the past. But right now, I think what Israel is finding out is that the status quo is not as sustainable as they thought, that they thought they had deterred Hamas from these kinds of major attacks, and clearly they had not. And so now they're kind of running out of options and having to kind of, go all out in a military campaign without a clear end game.
And the one certainty seems that whatever comes next will be worse for the innocent Palestinian people. There are 2 million in the Gaza Strip, and their lives have been miserable, and they're about to get worse.
Absolutely, and Hamas leadership shows no sign of caring at all about the people that it rules over, because if they did care, they would know that this would bring catastrophe and horror to the people of Gaza. But that's clearly what Hamas wants, because they derive political and military advantage from war with Israel, but there is no advantage for the ordinary people of Gaza, who are already some of the poorest and most suffering in the world, and they're going to suffer some more, just as you've been seeing today Israelis suffer. It's just this never-ending, heart-rending cycle of violence with no end in sight.
Max Booth, thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it. Coming up, how did Hamas pull this off without Israel knowing that this was coming? Even a senior U.S. military official said America was not tracking any sort of imminent attack on Israel in the last several days. We're going to pick up that story with our intelligence analysts next. Stay with us.
You talk about chaos as if it's me forcing a few votes. How disappointed are you with what happened here and Speaker McCarthy?
I thought it was unfair.
We don't have a speaker. 8 of our members voted with all the Democrats to oust him. Republicans struggling to figure out their way forward. What do you think of the chances of your party retaining control of the House next year? So are you running for speaker? Yeah, what were your conversations like with Trump? You got his endorsement? Manu Raju, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Social media has changed us, but our generation is waking up. We Are 8 is our force for change, where authenticity is more important than trends, and positivity is the only influence, where we control what feeds our mind, not some algorithm. And the real game changer? On 8, brands pay you and charities to drive positive change. So join us on We Are 8 and share the love with people and our planet.
This right here is confidence in a bottle.
Not only does it change you on the outside, but something on the inside, knowing that you're looking better.
Makes me feel so much more confident than I've ever felt in my life.
They are some of the hottest videos on social media. Those videos claiming to instantly get rid of bags under your eyes. Well, today we're going to see one for ourselves and let you be the judge. It's called Plexiderm, and lifestyle expert Annette Figueroa is here to tell us why she says this one is for real.
This one is for real, and I'm so excited. We even have a video, and you'll notice the model has bags underneath his eyes and some sagging, and all he uses is a small amount on a clean, dry face, and that's how easy it is.
All right, what's the active ingredient?
Okay, so it's silicates that are minerals found in shale rock, and what it does is it tightens and lifts the appearance of bags underneath your eyes in as little as 10 minutes, no prescriptions, and very little effort. Even watching the video, this is a real it's a model, but it's a real guy with real bags underneath his eyes.
My real true opinion is holy words I can't say on camera. This is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I could feel it just lifting my skin. It was amazing. It feels good. Feels great. Looks even better.
And I did this to my father. We were at home, so we applied it to his under eye bags, and let me tell you, we were so excited. In under 10 minutes, they visibly disappeared from view, and now it is literally part of both of our daily routines. He calls me every single month saying, "Hey, Annette, I'm out of Plexiderm, please send me more." And not only does it work on the bags, it works on the appearance of crow's feet, fine lines, and wrinkles. The way you want to do it is you want to have a clean, dry face. You use a small amount because it's so powerful. You have high school reunions, you have events you want to go to, you want to look years younger, this is it.
At our $14.95 price, it's the best way to try Plexiderm and see it work for yourself after your first application. Your solution is at plexidermtrial.com or call the number on your screen.
Nope.
Constant Contact delivers the marketing
marketing tools your small business needs to keep up, excel, and grow. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall.
A senior U.S. intelligence official tells CNN that Hamas's ability to coordinate these terrorist attacks on Israeli towns without detection raises concerns about blind spots by the U.S. and its allies. I'm joined now by CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller and CNN Senior National Security Analyst Juliette Kayyem. Thanks to both of you for being here. Juliette, the big question in Washington right now among intelligence analysts, how did Israel not even remotely see this coming?
Right, and it's the right question to ask even amongst this tragedy. One asks it for Israel's own protection because obviously terrorists will take advantage of what's clearly intelligence and preparedness gaps. What I couldn't believe when we started to hear the news was the extent of the attack by Hamas, the thousands or hundreds of bombs, the physical excursion, the drone excursion, the paragliding excursions, the water excursion, everything simultaneously that was neither detected nor as significantly responded to as quickly as you would have thought the Israelis were able to do. And so that kind of organization, which seems to me more like Mumbai and the attacks in India a decade ago, is actually without getting picked up through signal or human intelligence is a gap. I just don't know how Israel lost that storyline in terms of at least getting some understanding of what Hamas might be up to and the coordination it would have taken to plan this successful of an attack into Israel.
And John, I mean, you spent the last 20 years working in intelligence. What Juliette points out there is exactly right. And not just, I mean, the planning had to have been extensive to have such a successful operation, but then beyond that, the inadequate response in terms of how long it took for the IDF to get to some of these towns and kibbutzes really showed not just an intelligence failure, but a readiness failure. I can't hear John. Okay, so I didn't know if that was just I didn't know if that was just my earpiece or John. We're having trouble with your sound. I don't know what the problem is. You seem to be muted. Juliette, let me go to you while we figure out John. While we figure out John's sound.
Okay.
How long would an operation like this have had to have been in the works? I mean, the extent of the planning.
Yeah. Well, it's the manufacturing and the acquisition or the acquisition of the bombs, which does not happen overnight. It's the hiding of them. It's the ability to plan that many individuals simultaneously. I mean, these things. And let's just put right on Israel's border. So we're not talking about a foreign terrorist organization in Afghanistan planning an attack in the United States. Israel is well known for its signal intelligence. It's well known for its infiltration of Hamas, of paying members of Hamas to get information. And so the planning would have been months. They clearly also targeted a particular day, the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, and a holy holiday as well. And all of that takes coordination. This is not an uprising. This is a coordinated attack. And to what you were saying, I wrote today in the Atlantic, this isn't just an intelligence failure, it's an everything failure. I mean, it is before it happened, while it's happening, and the hours after for a country that everyone had looked at as being, choose your verb, right? The harshest, the best counterterrorism efforts in that area.
And we had Beth Sanner, the former deputy director of national intelligence, on earlier, and I asked her about why she thinks the hostages were taken, all these civilians, in addition to members of the Israeli military, but kids. We had a mom on earlier, a few minutes ago, who had two of her kids were taken hostage, and she's just beside herself. Why do you think they took all these these hostages. We don't know how many, but probably in the hundreds. Do you agree with Beth Sander that it's just an act of terror? It's just about terrorizing the Israeli people.
It is. It's look, there's something performative about this in terms of the attack that makes it similar to 9/11. They want a lot of people watching. They wanted those videos of those individuals, the young women, the children being taken, the horrifying future that is probably in store for them if they are still alive. They want Israel to have to make a calculation that no country wants to ever make about how aggressive you go and the possibility that your own civilians will be killed in that process. And knowing what we know now about potentially Israel's lack of intelligence about what's going on in Gaza and with Hamas means that they may be going in without much clarity about where people are. This is exactly why they did it. They wanted to put some sort of barrier, some sort of check on what's clearly going to be, because it's already been announced, a very aggressive air and eventually we assume ground war by Israel. So that's the nature of it. Look, they want people watching horrified. That is the nature of the kind of terror that Israel and the world faces.
John, I'm told your sound is now working. Where do you think the U.S. and intelligence communities are going to be most directly looking at in terms of trying to figure out the blind spots that they had?
Well, I think they're going to be looking at what did we miss, how did we miss it? And, as General Clapper pointed out earlier, we've been there before. The real thing is now is not the time. This is the time when we need to refocus on collection, analysis, and finding actionable intelligence. That's what the Israelis need to do, which is not time to get into the blame game. They've got to keep their intel people focused, and they can get to that later, and they will, and it's important. But over the next few days, what they have to be looking at is we've got this problem we're focused on in the south by the coast. We have to watch out for potential Hezbollah incursions as an Iranian proxy from the north, and that we make sure we have forces that are available to be up there without stripping everything to one location. They've got to be looking at their punishment operation that they're organizing in retaliation for this surprise attack, but they also have to be mindful of, as Juliet pointed out a minute ago, what about these hostages, and where will they be held, and will they be used not just as bargaining chips, but as human shields at places that are the new or alternate command and control locations for Hamas? So they have a lot on their plate in the next few days.
How much do you think the Iranians played a role in planning this operation?
So that's a really interesting question, because by doing nothing, the Iranians have a role in it. They bankroll Hamas by, amounts of $100 million a year. They give them the design for these missiles. They teach them how to build them in factories. So Iran's hand is always there. The real question is, because of our intelligence collection on Iran, which is usually pretty effective, the operational security of this operation, given the scale of it, by land, by sea, by air, by incursion into Israeli towns, was on such a scale that secrecy here on the Hamas part was paramount. It's not just an intelligence failure on the part of Israel, Jordan, the United States, all of the people who pool intelligence, but it's a success on the part of Hamas in terms of operational security. Bringing Iran in operationally could have added to that risk. So I'm sure Iran is poised to do things like help right now with cyber attacks, if they haven't already been involved in the cyber attacks, and in other ways, especially with their proxies like Hezbollah.
All right, John Miller and Julia Kayyem, thanks to both you. Appreciate it. The Israeli Defense Forces say as many as 1,000 Hamas terrorists took part in today's surprise attack on Israel. We'll be back in a second with military perspective on how this attack was waged and how Israel might respond. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Ideal and I lost 90 pounds on Golo. I struggled with weight loss and weight gain my entire life. With all the yo-yo dieting I did in the past, I would lose 20, 30, 50 pounds just to gain them over and over again. In 1 year, I've lost 5 sizes, and I'm on my way to lose another 3. With Golo, I can do it.
Change your life at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
He grew up a middle-class kid in a middle-class town. And while Joe Biden's traveled far and wide, Scranton, Pennsylvania has never left him. He knows what life is like for working people and knows middle-class life is too expensive right now. That's why he's passing laws to lower costs, capping insulin at $35 a month for seniors, giving Medicare the power to negotiate with drug companies for lower prices, lowering health insurance premiums for millions, and investing in American-made clean energy to lower power costs for families. For Joe Biden, it's about restoring the sense of security working people deserve. That simple promise, that peace of mind, he's determined to get it back because of where he's from and who he is.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
At Bombas, we make the comfiest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that feel good and most of all, do good. Because when you purchase one, we donate one to those in need. Visit bombas.com and get 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.
Israel at war. CNN brings you unparalleled coverage.
Following major breaking news
on the ground. With the latest developments.
The sirens have gone off. People are taking cover.
For continuing coverage, stay with CNN.
I've been pulled through time. If what I saw is true, there's nothing to stand between this world and utter destruction. It's up to us to save this place.
Is this crack?
Give it.
Come on, you're the god of mischief.
Always have been. Always will be.
I'm Pete Muntine at Reagan National Airport. This is CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
Good evening, I'm Jake Tapper, back with our special coverage of Israel at war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared war after Hamas terrorists launched a surprise attack on the Jewish Sabbath, also on a Jewish holy day, Shmini Atzeret, firing thousands of rockets, shooting civilians, kidnapping many civilians, along with some Israeli soldiers. The death toll is expected to continue rising. So far, the Israeli government says at least 300 Israelis were killed and 1,500 injured. Israel has been firing back overnight with strikes in Gaza. In the region, day is now beginning to break. The state of Israel, since its founding in 1948, is widely known to have some of the most sophisticated military and intelligence capabilities of any country in the region. It has thwarted numerous plots over the years, and with American funding assistance, its Iron Dome has given Israelis some sense of security from air attacks. This time, of course, Hamas went decidedly low-tech in many ways, using bulldozers, gunmen using paragliders, trucks, motorcycles, a multi-pronged attack that, as far as we know, Israel and the U.S. just simply didn't see coming in any way. Let's bring in retired Air Force Colonel and CNN military analyst Cedric Layton and CNN's Pentagon correspondent Oren Lieberman, who before he moved here was our Jerusalem correspondent. Warren, I've seen a lot of, especially academics and journalists in Israel, saying one of the reasons why the response from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, took so long was that so much of the IDF is on the eastern part of Israel, in the West Bank, protecting settlers, and there's a whole geopolitical part of that, instead of on the western part of the country. And what's your response? Is that accurate?
I can't say exactly where the IDF has positioned its forces. They're not about to say we have X number here and Y number here, but let's talk about where we simply have seen the IDF. They have operated repeatedly in Jenin in the West Bank, and in Tulkarm they carried out a raid recently. That's simply where we have seen their focus. And now when you ask the question of did they have the forces to stop this on Gaza, that answer is a resounding no. And it wasn't just the failure of intelligence to see it coming, it was then the failure of the military to stop it once it started, and the failure of the military to respond. Sure, there are tremendous Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, but it doesn't look like Israel is near the point where it can start a ground incursion because the forces simply aren't there.
Right, and we see reports from Israelis on the ground saying it took hours and hours and hours before the IDF was there to rescue them, and they only recently were able to take back some of these towns and kibbutzes.
And there is still some fighting ongoing from what we're seeing, and that gets to first how quickly Hamas struck and the numbers. To think 1,000 or up to 1,000 Hamas terrorists could have crossed the border in different ways across what was supposed to be a smart border, a fence with motion detectors and motion sensors that was supposed to stop tunneling, and they came across with a bulldozer, paragliders, and through the sea, and Israel was never able to pick up on this in advance.
So, Colonel, we know how it started. We don't know how it's going to end, or where it's even headed right now. Israel is, I don't know if you heard the Israeli military spokesman earlier today saying, I said, Netanyahu said, any innocent Palestinians get out of Gaza because we're going to attack, or at least get away from the areas where Hamas hides. Well, Hamas is embedded with the civilian population, and Palestinians in Gaza there's nowhere to go. They can't get out.
Exactly.
It's an open-air prison. He said, well, they should go near the beaches, etc.
That's completely unrealistic. And what that seems to indicate to me, Jake, is that the Israelis are planning some kind of an attack that will go after what they think are the command and control nodes of the Hamas leadership. Now, as you absolutely correctly said, all those command and control nodes, all those places where they have their offices, where they live, it's all among the rest of the population.
Well, he said it too, the IDF guy.
They're all right there.
Yeah.
And there is no way that they can avoid civilian casualties in a scenario like that. So what the Israelis could be doing is they could try to at least threaten this. There will be airstrikes for sure. There could be some ground incursions into Gaza. They may try to seal off the tunnels. They may try to do some other things there. But the tunnels weren't what was used in this particular case, it looks like right now. And so what they'll have to do is they'll have to perhaps have some limited incursions. But the thing that they're going to have to really watch for is how are they going to get the hostages back. That is going to be, I think, one of the most difficult things for them to deal with on the Israeli side at this point.
Yeah, Egypt could help out here if they wanted to, but per usual, none of the other Arab countries really want to be part of the solution.
Egypt has been a key player here in the past, especially in my time there when we saw what were much smaller escalations. Egypt stepped in along with the UN to an extent, and they could be ended pretty quickly in 24, 48 hours. In the past, you've seen Turkey play a productive role, Qatar play a productive role. Who plays that role now? Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is trying on the phone with everybody, but I don't know that a phone call and diplomatic efforts are cutting this off in some fashion.
You were our Pentagon, you were our Jerusalem guy, now you're our Pentagon guy. Are you hearing any concern from military folks here in the U.S. about what's going to happen?
Not yet. Right now it's unequivocal support. You've heard that from Lloyd Austin, Defense Secretary, all the way up to President Joe Biden and others in the national security establishment. Where this goes from here, I don't know that the U.S. knows that answer yet. Frankly, I don't know that Israel knows that answer yet, because it all depends on what's your goal in Gaza, and that's incredibly difficult, and Israel knows that. And as Colonel Layton pointed out, the hostages there complicates any calculation you try to make.
Well, they seem to be suggesting that the goal is they want to get rid of Hamas. It's no longer containing Hamas. They want to end Hamas.
Yeah, I think that's an impossible goal, quite frankly, Jake. I mean, Hamas is embedded within the population in Gaza, and if you don't have the hearts and minds, you have nothing. You also have a situation where the whole educational structure, the whole social structure is really interwoven with Hamas and other groups like it. And those groups have connections to places like Iran. They have connections to places beyond that. So it's going to be a real problem for them to do anything like this. This is going to be a real sociological dilemma for the Israelis. They're not going to be able to complete this in a effective way.
All right, Colonel Cedric Layton and Norman Lieberman, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it. We're live in Israel next for the latest on how the country is retaliating after that terrorist attack unlike any it has ever seen before. Stay with us.
These politicians can never agree.
Emma, we don't always agree. Like, you're into politics. It stresses me out.
You sleep hot, I sleep cool.
You like sleeping in luxury. I like spending less.
I guess that's why we agreed on this sofa mattress.
Maybe America needs a sofa.
At least we'd be comfortable disagreeing. Sofa, luxury mattresses made affordable.
This is AG1, foundational nutrition to support whole body, brain, and gut health. Vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, adaptogens, functional mushrooms, all that and this. Start at drinkag1.com. Here's how Tommy lost 30 pounds on Noom weight.
I'm Tom.
Noom helped him use psychology to lose weight.
The mindful aspect made me feel more conscious about what I was eating, why I was eating it. It's actually working.
Lose weight and make it last with Noom weight.
For your most brilliant smile, Crest has you covered. Nice smile, Brad. Nice. Thanks. Crest 3D White. 100% more stain removal. Crest.
Does your wife know you spend this much money?
You know, I've got to be honest, I don't think she's seen.
You spent over $600 on takeout?
I have a big family.
Also, why are you paying for Netflix twice?
Is this why people read these things?
Just get Rocket Money. It shows you all your expenses in one place and even tracks your subscriptions. The app can also help you make a budget that works for your income, and anytime you get close to your spending limits, it alerts you. That way, you won't end up spending like $800 some odd on takeout. Seriously, who does that? Just download Rocket Money today.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Ready? Is Ukraine going to win this war?
We bring the stories that matter to the masses.
This is a reminder of the violence faces migrants.
These are issues that affect so many people around the world.
Traveling high above the Arctic Circle
To a very different world.
northern plains of Cambodia, a safari in Kenya. Tomorrow on The Whole Story.
That is so fast and terrifying at the same time. The wolves are chaotic and the people are chaotic. Can't believe I'm doing this tomorrow.
Thousands gather each year for the running of the bulls. But is it sport or just suffering?
It's strange because we're in the midst of this atmosphere that's supposed to be uplifting. If we're protest for animal rights, how do you reconcile it?
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, tomorrow at 8 on CNN.
I'm Rahel Solomon in New York, and this is CNN.
Today's unprecedented terrorist attack was marked by Hamas crossing Israel's southern border with Gaza, storming Israeli towns and kibbutzes, and killing soldiers and civilians alike. Towns such as Zikin, CNN's Nick Robertson is in Zakim right now. You can see it in the map there. It's the northernmost dot on the map north of Gaza. Nick, it's sunrise there in Gaza, or north of Gaza. What is the situation like there as a new day begins?
Yeah, there's a sense that we're seeing a little more build-up of the Israeli military forces. We've seen the tanks go in. We've talked about that. We've seen a few howitzers, armored personnel vehicles going in. But it's nothing compared to what is expected to be deployed here. But with daylight, there are people coming here to try to see their family that they lost contact with yesterday. A gentleman standing behind me here really wants to get in touch with his son and his former partner, his former wife, who are in one of the communities close to Gaza. These are areas now that the Israeli Defense Forces believe that they have secured. The police station in Sderot, just a few miles away, was secured a little earlier. But it's still hard for people to get in touch with some of their loved ones, and that's a concern. So we're seeing a few people showing up this morning here to this checkpoint, asking for permission to go through. That's not happening yet. This is still a controlled zone, Jake.
Are you hearing much from the people who live there about what they've been through?
We haven't been able to get in there yet. We believe that some people have been coming out on buses. The Israeli Defense Forces helping them evacuate the area. We do hope to be able to get into some of those communities later, but it's not clear when we'll get that access. So at the moment, we don't know. We haven't been able to talk to people who've gone through that horrendous and horrific and harrowing experience of the past 24 hours. And it was about 24 hours ago, of course, that this all unfolded.
Yeah, Nick Robertson, thank you so much. Let's bring in Ted Deutsch. He's the CEO of the American Jewish Committee, a former Democratic congressman from Florida and a lifelong pro-Israel activist. Congressman, thanks for joining us. So we're learning some new details through a video that CNN just authenticated. We're not going to show it because it is so disturbing. It shows an unconscious woman, an Israeli woman, being paraded around by Hamas terrorists. One of the terrorists has his leg draped over her waist. Another holds a clump of her hair. He's cheering Allahu Akbar. Another man is seen spitting on her head. CNN has confirmed this is a German-Israeli dual national. I know I'm sure you've seen a lot of these horrific videos on social media and other media platforms today. What's your reaction? I don't know if you've seen this one, or to any of the others you've seen.
Thanks, Jake. I have seen that video, and I've seen a number of the others. Look, what happened in Israel is nothing short of a pogrom. You know what that is. I know what that is throughout the history of the Jewish people. These are massacres of Jews. This terrorist strike, this terror army went into Israel and slaughtered 300 Israelis. And for perspective, I mean, Israel's a small country. You know that. For perspective, in American terms, that would be as if over 10,000 Americans were slaughtered. And the barbarity and the brutality that we witnessed in videos like this and in the stories that we've heard from friends and relatives in Israel, and again, small country, small Jewish community around the world, so many of us have been in constant contact with people that we know across Israel. This horrific action was carried out by a terror group that has that was intent on trying to do something horrific in slaughtering Jews. And I'll just say this, what that shows is the difference between this terror group and what we're going to see in the coming days. And that's the last point I'll make, Jake. The fact is that going forward, Israel's going to take the necessary action to protect its citizens just like any other country in the world would, just like any person around the world would expect from its leadership. And every casualty, every fatality in that battle as a result of what happened by Hamas is Hamas's fault. But the Israeli soldiers will regret every loss of life. These Hamas thugs, these terrorists, these disgusting, awful attackers they relish in it. And the desecration of bodies and the treatment of live bodies, the hostages that are now in Gaza, and the parading around of dead bodies as well. It's disgusting. It's something that every person who has some sense of decency around the world should look at. And it's the reason that so many world leaders are standing firmly and clearly with Israel, as we all should.
When you were a member of the House of Representatives, you were a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the Global Counterterrorism Subcommittee. You would have been privy to some U.S. intelligence. What do you make of the fact that neither U.S. nor Israeli intelligence had any idea this was coming?
Jake, when I chair the Middle East Subcommittee for 10 years, I would have responded exactly the way I'm going to respond now, which is there will be plenty of opportunities to try to figure out what happened here, but I'm respectfully going to suggest that this isn't that time. This is a moment when one of our closest allies, a country that sits in a place that is exposed to dangerous regimes, is under attack. That's what happened yesterday. Again, I think there'll be lots of. I know throughout the day there have been people trying to figure out exactly what happened here. It's a really important exercise, but we need to focus on what's happening at the moment, and that's the fact that this terror army came in, has now launched over 5,000 rockets all across Israel. 1,900, close to 2,000 people already acknowledged to be injured, and reservists from around the country. Some multiple generations within the same family being called up in the citizens' army that Israel has to defend their country. That's what we're focused on at the moment.
What do you think Congress can do without a Speaker of the House? Obviously, Israel is going to want aid, help, additional supplies. The former ambassador, Michael Oren, was on earlier saying that one of the things that the U.S. often does in situations like this is help with ammunition, help Israel replenish ammunition, and then Israel pays it back at a later point in time. But right now there is literally no Speaker of the House, and it is unclear how Congress, which the House obviously, as you know, needs to be the first one to begin the process of authorizing any aid package to any other country. What happens?
Yeah, obviously I don't know exactly how that will work out. I do know a couple of things though, in terms of how Congress and the White House are approaching this. We heard in Congress from Greg Meeks. I thought he made clear that he's in your conversation with him, the ongoing discussions he's having with leadership about how this would get done. And I trust that it will. I have no idea how, but I do know that the statements from a huge number of members of Congress, House and Senate, just like leaders around the world, have been incredibly supportive of Israel in the face of this horrific attack. And most importantly, Secretary Austin and the President of the United States made clear the commitment of the United States to Israel's security. I don't know. There are a lot of things that I don't know about what's happening in Congress. Jake, we're all trying to figure that out. There's never been a moment where a Speaker of the House has been kicked out. That's something that the internal politics of which they'll have to figure out. But at a moment like this, when a close ally is facing the kind of risks in the aftermath of this really terrible massacre, we're going to have to figure out how to do that, and Congress will have to figure that out. And I'll look forward to the conversations that I'll be having with my former colleagues, Democrats and Republicans alike, who are dedicated to doing what's necessary to stand with our ally.
Former Congressman Ted Deutsch, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.
Coming up next, it was supposed to be an all-night dance party celebrating the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, but it turned into a dawn of terror. Our coverage of Israel at war continues. Stay with us.
Does someone who threatens Putin's power ever die unintentionally in Russia?
I don't think so. He just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't.
Who was responsible for that image?
I take responsibilities for anything that happens in this city.
How dependent is the government on Elon Musk?
The answer to your question is we are very, very beholden to Elon Musk.
The Source with Caitlin Collins, Monday at 9.
Try killing bugs the worry-free way. Not the other way. Zevo traps use light to attract and trap flying insects with no odor and no mess. They work continuously, so you don't have to. Zevo, people-friendly, bug deadly.
Stop whitening your smile the old-fashioned way with strips and trays that can take 30 minutes to an hour. I'm Jonathan Greenhut, the CEO of Power Swabs. When I met Dr. Ginniker and he introduced me to Power Swabs and I saw how effective they were and how easy they were to use, I knew we had to share it with the world. Power Swabs was clinically studied to whiten natural teeth as well as stain caps, crowns, and veneers. It's so effective, it works on stains caused by coffee, tea, red wine, and even smoking. For those of you who have that one stained tooth that's darker than the rest, Power Swabs can target that area using swab precision.
My favorite thing about the Power Swabs is that I was actually able to take the swab and really get through some of those areas that are kind of like untreated. I felt like I can immediately see the results and I'm like, oh, I'm definitely starting to see the shades getting brighter and brighter or whiter and whiter.
If you have yellowing between your teeth, if you have coffee or tea stains near your gum line, just snap, swab, and smile. And in each 5-minute application, you'll see whiter teeth. So stop whitening your smile the old-fashioned way with strips and trays and start using the Power Swabs 5-minute solution.
Well, they're whiter, they're brighter, and I feel better about my smile. And it was so easy to do.
One friend was like, your teeth look like really white. Did you do anything to it? And I was like, I did. I did Power Swabs.
Call for your 5-minute solution to whiter teeth. Order Power Swabs and receive up to 50% off the retail price. And as an added bonus, get a free Power Swabs Quick Stick Pen with your order. The Quick Stick Pen is your on-the-go solution to help prevent stains from adhering to your teeth after drinking coffee, tea, or even after smoking. And in addition to saving up to 50% off and your free Quick Stick Pen, get free shipping by ordering now. Dial the number on your screen or visit powerswabs.com today.
Constant Contact delivers the marketing tools your small business needs to keep up, excel, and grow. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Page Publishing. Want to publish a book? We'll review your manuscript for free.
If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you.
Call 800-563-0741.
In a matter of just minutes, the citizens of Israel went from enjoying their lives to fleeing in terror as dawn broke. Today, hundreds of young people were attending a music festival on some rural farmland near the Israel-Gaza border. You can see in this cell phone video the confusion as they began hearing sirens and then rockets, confusion that quickly turned into panic. A frantic dash for their lives. It was supposed to be an all-night dance party celebrating the joyous holiday of Sukkot. Instead, you see cars packed with terrified young people snarled in traffic. The woman who took this video tells us she's still trying to get in touch with friends who were at the festival. And just a few moments ago, we heard what appear to be new explosions in Gaza City, where it's now just before 7 a.m. Take a listen. Our reporters on the ground are working to get the latest details in CNN's for continuing coverage of what's going on in the region. We'll have much more after this break.
After cooking a delicious chicken cheddar broccoli recipe, you will want to delete all your delivery apps because nothing beats a sweet tomatoes and smooth, silky zucchini. Nor taste combos. It's not fast food, but it's so good.
Hi, I'm Stacy, and I've lost 60 pounds on Golo. This belt I used to wear way down at the first and second notch. It's the only thing I've kept from before losing weight, and I'm keeping this because I'm never going back.
I've always been prone to hair thinning.
I was getting older. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
There are more identity threats than you realize. LifeLock alerts you and works to fix problems with a dedicated restoration specialist. Go to lifelock.com.
For 12 years, for 4,383 sunrises, across millions of mornings, we've been working to make one thing better. This, a science-driven formulation to support whole body, brain, and gut health. Start at drinkag1.com.
Bathfitter is a better way to remodel your tub. A custom-made, watertight fit and high-quality materials mean a beautiful tub and a great value. Bathfitter, it just fits. Visit bathfitter.com to book your free consultation.
I sign up for free trials all the time. What I don't do is cancel them. Rocket Money uncovers hidden subscriptions and notifies you when a charge is upcoming. From there, you decide if you want that service. And if not, cancel it right from the app with one tap. Download Rocket Money today.
In today's busy world, managing money is hard. That's why I love Rocket Money, an app that brings your entire financial picture into focus. Rocket Money also saves you time by canceling subscriptions you no longer want and getting you lower rates on your bills. Download Rocket Money and start saving today.
She said, "Why did Matthew Shepard die?" And I said, "Well, because he was gay."
My soul ached at humans' ability to be cruel to another.
Innovation transforms the world, turning the status quo upside down. Innovation created a healthcare system that not only improves the lives of veterans, it transforms the lives of healthcare professionals with unique opportunities to work with industry thought leaders while serving our nation's heroes. The Department of Veterans Affairs, where innovation ensures those who served our nation are served by the very best. See how a career at VA can transform your future.
Tomorrow on The Whole Story, thousands gather each year for the running of the bulls. But is it sport or just suffering? The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, tomorrow at 8 on CNN.
I am Jose Andres. I'm taking my daughters to taste the food that made me who I am.
Jose Andres and family in Spain. New episode tomorrow at 9 on CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Mike.
Israel at war. CNN brings you unparalleled coverage.
Following major breaking news
on the ground.
24 hours into the most serious threat to its security in modern memory, perhaps ever. Have a look at live pictures now of Gaza City. Dawn just starting to break behind the skyline there. It is widely expected that a massive Israeli military operation will soon engulf this Palestinian enclave. Israel confirming a significant number of Israelis, including at least one soldier, have been captured by Hamas militants. You see one of them here being bundled into a car, a young woman. Their locations and fates are currently unknown. It is a shocking and unprecedented escalation in the region's long history of conflict. Israeli forces have been pounding Hamas targets in Gaza for much of the past 24 hours or so. Earlier on Saturday, the Prime Minister stating unequivocally that the country was at war. And since dawn on Saturday, thousands of rockets have been fired from Gaza in rapid salvos and in numbers never before seen in such a short period of time. In many cases, too many for the Iron Dome air defense system to intercept. In retaliation, the Israeli leader vowing to turn Gaza into, quote, an island of ruin. Have a listen.
What happened today has never been seen in Israel, and I will make sure that it does not happen again. The entire government is behind this decision. The IDF will immediately use all its strength to destroy Hamas's capabilities, and we will take mighty vengeance for this black day that they have forced on the state of Israel and its citizens. All of the places which Hamas is deployed, hiding and operating in, that wicked city, we will turn it into an island of ruins. I am telling Gaza's people to leave those places now, because we will take action everywhere.
As the Prime Minister just said, the Israeli military warning Palestinian civilians in Gaza to leave their homes immediately because of what's to come. The thing is, this is a Gaza Strip. It's unclear where 2 million civilians could flee to. Meanwhile, Israeli forces report they have retaken control of the police station in the Israeli town of Sderot. CNN's Nada Bashir tracking all of these developments, joins me now live from London. What do we know about the state of fighting? It wasn't that long ago that Israel was still battling these infiltrators. Are they back in control of their territory?
Well, this is certainly the first priority, Michael, for the Israel Defense Forces, for the Israeli government. That has been clearly expressed, and they are still focusing on regaining control of those territories and areas that have been infiltrated by Hamas fighters. As you mentioned there, we saw that attack yesterday in which that infiltration took place by land, air and sea, and we have seen, of course, some Israeli civilians and soldiers taken as hostage or prisoners of war as a result of that infiltration and taken back into Gaza. Now, over the course of Saturday, we have seen continued gun battles in these areas where Hamas fighters have entered and infiltrated Israeli territory. But as you mentioned there, we have seen some developments in the last couple of hours overnight in Sderot. Israeli police say they managed to regain control of a police station there where Hamas fighters were said to have taken control temporarily over Saturday. So some progress on that front. Now, we've heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu describing this as the first phase of Israel's response, focusing on regaining control of those areas impacted in yesterday's attack. What will be the second response, and which will be their next focus in the coming hours, will be a military response. According to Benjamin Netanyahu, they are now focusing on those offensive preparations, positioning their troops ready for what is set to be a military response to the attack by Hamas fighters in Israel. But of course, we have seen overnight continued rocket fire, both thousands of rockets being fired from Gaza into Israel, many of them intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, of course, but some making landfall, hitting targets, including where we saw targets hit in Ashkelon, including a hospital there, although no casualties reported. And in turn, we have seen a fierce response by the IDF hitting targets within Gaza. We've seen multiple high-rises being targeted over Saturday, including continued rocket fire overnight from Israel into Gaza. And as you mentioned, that warning from the IDF telling residents in these areas within Gaza to leave their homes, to evacuate, because this will continue. And of course, questions as to where these people can evacuate to, these Palestinians, because of course, as you mentioned there, this is an air and land blockade on Gaza. There is very little option for these Palestinians to flee. So this is going to be a difficult few hours, a difficult day ahead. But as we've heard from the Israeli officials, as well as Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, this isn't just going to be a day or 2 days. He has described this as a long operation ahead.
All right, Nada, thank you. Nada Bashir there in London with the latest for us. Meanwhile, Washington could announce new assistance for Israel as early as Sunday. That's according to US officials who say the two countries are already talking about what kind of aid Israel could use right now. The military aid was the subject of a phone call between President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday. Kayla Tashi has more.
The White House is working around the clock to understand the scope of Israel's needs as it responds to these attacks, which the U.S. is calling appalling and unprecedented. A senior administration official says the focus of the U.S. is in assisting to keep the violence contained at this stage, and that there are conversations happening up and down the military chain to deliver direct support to Israel, which I'm told by sources Prime Minister Netanyahu directly asked President Biden for in a phone call that the two leaders held on Saturday. Officials have acknowledged that the lack of a Speaker of the House of Representatives in the U.S. and a permanent U.S. ambassador to Israel are unique challenges at this moment as the U.S. tries to get support in a timely and fulsome manner to Israel. But President Biden says that support from the U.S. is rock solid and unwavering.
The United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop.
While Biden did not specify the target of that particular message, U.S. officials have been clear in Iran's role as a longtime sponsor of Hamas, but when asked whether they believed that Iran was behind the Hamas attacks in recent days, the U.S. said that they could not yet draw that conclusion. Kayla Tausche, CNN, the White House.
And joining me now is Cedric Leitner, a CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force colonel. Always good to see you, sir. And we keep going back to this thing that, you know, I've been to Gaza so many times I can't count, but it is one of the most surveilled areas in the Middle East. It is constant. And yet this comes out of the blue in a military sense. Israel blindsided. Talk about that failure and why you think it might have happened.
Yeah, Michael, I think this is one of the classic failures of technology because when you look at what you experienced when you went to Gaza, you saw the surveillance techniques that the Israelis had, you saw the equipment, you saw the cameras, you saw the other devices that the Israelis used, and we know that there were other things that they were doing in terms of monitoring radio traffic, telephone traffic, all of those things. But what Hamas did, what their leadership did, was apparently they moved off of the normal modern communications links that we take for granted every day and went back to what you did in the 19th century, face-to-face meetings. They went and used couriers instead of going in and using the telephone or the cell phone, and that I think played a large role in doing this. They seem to be very patient, Hamas, in terms of how they planned this, how they carried it out, and it really, I think, takes us back to a point where we have to look at the fact that technological intelligence is not always the end-all and be-all that we've gotten used to from an intelligence perspective.
Yeah, great point. I mean, Israel, I was talking about this earlier with somebody else, Israel has for literally years said it will and wanted to destroy the military capability of Hamas. And clearly that's failed. So what are Israel's options now?
The options are really limited, Michael, and this is one of those headaches that war planners always have because it's one thing to bomb something into oblivion, but it's a completely different thing to take control of a society and take control of a mindset and change that mindset. This is, there's no way that the so-called hearts and minds of Hamas and its adherents are going to be changed in any way, shape, or form by what the Israelis do. But on the other hand, the Israelis have to respond to what happened here. So in essence, they're caught between a rock and a hard place because they really don't have any military means to change the things that brought them to this point. So what we'll see is, unfortunately, a continuation of this conflict, but at a much higher level until and unless cooler heads prevail. And that's going to be, I think, a very difficult thing to achieve at this point.
Given obviously the depth of planning that went into this, and it must have been a lot and probably over a long period of time, one imagines that Hamas went into this knowing the possibility or even the likelihood of an Israeli ground incursion. How prepared do you think Hamas will be for that eventuality, a ground operation, and could that be why they took hostages into Gaza?
I think that was actually one of the main reasons why they took hostages. Of course, Hamas and other terrorist groups in the Middle East have used hostage-taking as a bargaining tool and a policy for many, many, many decades. But the way in which they've done this does reflect a degree of meticulous planning, and I think what they're looking at is keeping those hostages so that a ground incursion by the Israelis would have only limited success and may be a very difficult thing for the Israelis to achieve. So the Israelis are going to have to be very meticulous if they do plan something like this. It's going to be very hard for them to find where the hostages are and to extricate them forcibly. So this, I think, will require more diplomacy as opposed to forceful means. But Israel should definitely plan for both possibilities at this point.
Yeah, because I guess, when it comes to hostages, Israel's got some, pretty capable special forces who could carry out such things and have done in the past. But the thing is, they would be relying on intelligence in terms of where the hostages are and so on. And we have seen this intelligence failure. So would that complicate hostage recovery, make it that much more perilous?
It certainly could, but I think we also have to make the distinction between a strategic intelligence failure, which this seems to be, as opposed to a tactical intelligence situation. A tactical intelligence situation is one in which, now that things have happened, they may very well find the ways in which they can trace where Hamas is. They may be able to find telltale signs of where the hostages are, or perhaps where they have been, and that becomes something that they can use from a forensic standpoint in order to track them and potentially extricate them from Gaza. It's not a done deal in either way, but it is absolutely a very difficult proposition for the Israelis to conduct such operations. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, good point. I mean, one thing that's been staggering about this too, the most staggering thing is the infiltrations, which nobody's ever seen before in covering this conflict. But it was the massive number of rockets fired in a short period of time. Where does Hamas, Gaza is blockaded. I mean, not much gets in or out that the Israelis don't know about. Where does Hamas get the materiel to make and fuel and arm these rockets? Do we know?
Yeah, so there are several theories, and in some cases we have some concrete evidence, but the Hamas forces have developed various techniques to manufacture some rockets, reverse engineer others, and they get a lot of aid through several means, most of it coming eventually can be traced back to places like Iran. In some cases there is some connection to Hezbollah in Lebanon and other areas in that region, but it is something where there has been a lot of, I'll call it indigenous work, if you will, that has been going on in Gaza by Hamas itself, and they've been pretty good at figuring out certain things, reverse engineering others, and learning from the mistakes they've made in the past. So they've become a fairly effective insurgent force, and I would characterize them as an insurgent force because that is more of what they're like as compared to a regular army at this point.
I really appreciate you sticking around for us, Cedric Layton, Colonel. Thanks so much. Good to see you as always.
Good to see you too, Michael. Thank you.
Cheers. Now, Israel's fight against Hamas militants who invaded the country basically has stretched into the wee hours of the morning, and Israel already striking back inside Gaza, as we've been reporting. The latest updates from the Middle East coming up. Also, we talked to a former U.S. ambassador in the region about what the end game is for Hamas in this sudden and dramatic escalation. We'll be right back.
Israel at war. CNN brings you unparalleled coverage.
Following major breaking news
on the ground. With the latest developments.
The sirens have gone off. People are taking cover.
For continuing coverage, stay with CNN.
With Gold Bond, you can age on your own terms. Retinol Overnight means the smoothing benefits of retinol are now for your whole body. Plus, fast-working crepe corrector diminishes wrinkled skin in just 2 days. Gold Bond, champion your skin.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
When you're the leader in disaster disaster cleanup and restoration. How do you make like it never even happened happen? By being prepared for anything.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
Pro-level performance at work and at home. Right now, save $30 on the BG56 CE blower. Real steel. Find yours.
This is your season to smile with new dentures from Aspen Dental. To gather together and discover the moments that matter. To jump into the fun and join in the celebration. To help get you ready, your Aspen Dental denture team is celebrating 25 years of affordable care with an epic anniversary savings event. Don't miss enjoying a moment with fast repairs in our on-site labs and 20% off your custom dentures. Plus, we have a denture money-back guarantee so you can smile with confidence. Aspen Dental. Book today. Morgan Stanley, old school hard work meets bold new thinking. Partnering to unlock new ideas, to create new legacies, to transform a company, industry, economy, generation. Because grit and vision working in lockstep puts you on the path to your full potential. Old school grit, new world ideas. Morgan Stanley.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Eucora. Help maintain a healthy urinary tract with Eucora.
I had 8 UTIs in 1 year. This inspired my husband and I to start Eucora.
It truly works miracles.
The peace of mind I've been looking for. Try today at Eucora.com.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the nation is facing a, quote, long and difficult war following Hamas's shocking attack on Israel. Israel unleashing furious rocket fire overnight against Gaza, and the Israeli military telling Gaza civilians to evacuate residential areas. This all coming after that brazen and unprecedented assault on Israel by the Gaza-based militant group. Israeli sources say Hamas has launched thousands of rockets against Israeli towns and cities, including as far north as Tel Aviv, and sent as many as 1,000 fighters into Israeli towns, killing some 300 Israeli civilians and soldiers and kidnapping others. Mr. Netanyahu vowing to destroy Hamas wherever its leaders and fighters hide. Former Israeli Prime Minister and opposition leader Yair Lapid is urging Mr. Netanyahu to put aside their political differences and form an emergency government. In a statement, he said, Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that with extreme and dysfunctional security cabinet, he can't manage a war. Israel needs to be led by a professional, experienced and responsible government. He went on, we need to put politics to one side for the sake of an emergency government which will manage the situation with determination and won't deal with anything else until we achieve victory over our enemies. CNN's Nick Robertson is just a few miles from the Gaza border and has the latest for us.
What we're witnessing here, the first time that we've seen it tonight, is Israeli heavy armor being transported in towards Gaza. That's the road to Gaza, about 2.5 miles, 3 kilometers that way. And these are Israeli battle tanks. I've counted at least 5. There are more trucks transporting them coming around the corner. The night has been very active. Beyond that checkpoint there, that is the area where the Israeli Defense Forces have been contesting with Hamas militants who are still inside Israel. Where we are, this is the area that Israel controls proper. Beyond that, it is still an active military zone. These tanks are being moved into that zone. We've heard helicopter gunships attacking positions on the ground. We've seen special forces moving in and out of the area around here. And we've seen a lot of missiles fired coming out of Gaza by Hamas militants and others, potentially fired out of Gaza and intercepted by Iron Dome defensive missile systems. The Iron Dome's been firing up from over here. The intercept literally happening overhead, and that has happened on multiple occasions. We've been hearing as well Israeli jets flying towards Gaza, and then we've heard explosions, heavy explosions at times, flashes on the horizon through the night. So this is a very dynamic and fluid situation, but this is the first time we are seeing heavy Israeli battle armor moving towards Gaza, perhaps the first steps of future deployments. Nick Robertson, Zakim, Israel.
Joining me now is the former U.S. ambassador to Iraq and Turkey, James Jeffrey. Mr. Ambassador, really appreciate you making the time. What do you think Hamas's calculation was with this operation and the timing and the scale of it?
First, it saw Israel weakened by internal division over West Bank policy and judicial reform. Secondly, it is closely aligned with Iran. Iran wants to block the growing accommodation between Israel and Arab states, most notably Saudi Arabia. But Hamas is miscalculated. They hadn't considered how strongly Israel is going to react, and that will be strong indeed.
So what does what's happened suggest in terms of Hamas capabilities, resources, and given their preparations for the attack itself, how prepared do you think they are for what's to come? I mean, they'll be expecting whatever the response is.
To be sure, first, the Iron Dome air defense system actually worked very well despite many thousands of rockets. There have been no major installations hit, and very few Israeli casualties despite all the media reporting. Where Hamas succeeded brilliantly was this ground, air, and sea infantry assault on Israeli bases and Israeli civilian communities near Gaza, with many, many hostages taken, hundreds of people killed. That is a huge blow, and Israel has given orders to the IDF, as per the Israeli defense spokesman on CNN an hour ago, to eliminate Hamas's offensive capability and eliminate Hamas's ability to govern in Gaza. That is tantamount to destroying Hamas, and that is a big agenda. Israel is going to have to go in on the ground and in a big way.
Yeah, sadly, the routine seems to be, flare up, albeit this one bigger than others, then a period of quiet, and then it happens all over again. What fundamental changes, if any, can be brought to end that cycle?
Remember, relatively minor Hezbollah attack out of Lebanon, another Iranian-backed terrorist group, in 2006 produced a massive, not tactically very good, but strategically effective Israeli offensive into Lebanon that has kept that front quiet now for 17 years. That's what Israel will seek. They are going to go in. I see no other alternative to them, and they are going to take down Hamas as a major military force. We did this with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria from 2015 to 2019. It is a long and bloody and tough fight, and the Israelis are getting ready for it. But Hamas has provoked Israel in a way they haven't been provoked since the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. That's the reality on the ground now.
Yeah, the thing is, Israel has said many times before, and I've been covering it for decades, that they're going to destroy Hamas, they're going to destroy their capability. The Gaza isn't Syria. I mean, you've got 2 million civilians in a very small area. They haven't been able to do that to Hamas before now. Why would they be able to do it now? What would it take to do that?
That's a good question. Very important to your viewers, many of them American, because this is going to involve America. before there was an understanding unwritten with Hamas in Gaza. You can fire rockets at us, we'll do minor incursions, bomb some of your headquarters, and then it settles again. We've seen that in 2008. We saw that again in 2014. We saw it again in 2021. But Hamas broke the rules. They have asserted the ability to assault Israel and attack Israeli civilians in a way we have not seen since the 1948 war. Israel has to respond. They have to take out Hamas, or the Israeli people and the Israeli state will not live in peace. I have to implore you, this is not normal. That's what Netanyahu is signaling. That's what the orders to the Israeli Defense Forces are. This is going to be extraordinary, as the Israeli military is calling it. It's an unprecedented Israeli response to an unprecedented Hamas attack.
It certainly was unprecedented. Never seen anything like that before with the infiltrators roaming the streets. Ambassador James Jeffrey, I really appreciate you making the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
As we've been reporting, Hamas says it is holding dozens of Israelis following the group's surprise raid from Gaza. We'll have the latest on the militant group's unprecedented attack and Israel's response when we come back.
Okay, everyone, our mission is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
Want to pay only $40 per month with Sling TV to watch CNN, HGTV, MSNBC, and your other favorite channels? You can stream it all on Sling, all for just $40 per month. Try Sling today at sling.com/watchnow.
Guys, how frustrating is it to find a great pair of jeans? Too loose there, too long there? Standard jeans use just 2 measurements, and Taylor Custom Jeans use 7 different measurements to give you the perfect fit. Your phone can measure you right now. M. Taylor on iOS or Android.
Now's the time for cleaner indoor air with an air duct cleaning from Stanley Steamer. You've noticed for carpet cleaning, but we've been cleaning air ducts for over 20 years. We do things the right way, cleaning your entire system. So if you need an air duct cleaning, call 1-800-STEAMER today.
Ooh, Tracy, look. She's going for the bin.
Oh my, look at a scoop.
Thank you.
Hey, Stacy, what do you think he's doing with that bottle?
Oh no, he's gonna throw it in the trash. I can't look.
Wait. He's putting it in his bag to recycle later.
Way to go, Mr. Brown Shoes.
Hey, up here.
Who's this? I could watch humans all day long.
We are, and we do.
Does someone who threatens Putin's power ever die unintentionally in Russia?
I don't think so. He just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't.
Who is responsible for that image?
I take responsibilities for anything that happens in this city.
How dependent is the government on Elon Musk?
The answer to your question is, we are very, very beholden to Elon Musk.
The Source with Caitlin Collins, Monday at 9.
I was shocked that I had cancer because there isn't cancer in my family.
I didn't know you could die from skin cancer. And then I go in 2 weeks later to get my diagnosis of melanoma.
Melanoma is the deadliest form of skin cancer.
Protect yourself by being sun safe. Check yourself with monthly skin exams. Inform yourself. Skin cancer is real. Learn more at saveyourskin.ca.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protect protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
I'm Zachary Cohen in Washington, and this is CNN.
Hamas claims it has captured dozens of Israeli citizens and soldiers in its surprise incursion, a fact confirmed by the Israeli military. Videos have surfaced online, such as this one geolocated by CNN, showing an Israeli woman being forcibly pushed into a vehicle and taken away. An IDF spokesman said it doesn't have a firm number of possible hostages, but describes it as a significant number. Families of the missing are being urged to share information, including DNA, with police as soon as it is safe to do so. European leaders and others around the world have been reacting to the Hamas attack on Israel. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen speaking on the phone to the Israeli President Isaac Herzog. She offered her support, the EU's full support, and posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the EU mourns the victims and stands by Israel's right to defend itself. Meanwhile, there were demonstrations of support for Hamas in some parts of the Middle East. Thousands of Yemenis took to the streets in the capital Sana'a on Saturday to rally for the militant group. You see them there, Palestinian flags being waved and chants of support for Gaza. The scenes were similar in Kuwait, where tens of thousands gathered to show their support. CNN Summer Abdulaziz shows us how other countries are reacting to the situation.
An unprecedented attack by Hamas on Israel. Israel's full-bore response, including a declaration that it was at war with Hamas, and a vow to exact a huge price on those responsible.
I have ordered an extensive mobilization of reserves and that we return fire of a magnitude that the enemy has not known.
Many of Israel's allies say they stand with Israel, saying it has the right to defend itself after such a large-scale and brazen attack.
Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching.
No signs now of the previous rocky relations between Biden and Netanyahu. That flared between the two leaders after a controversial judicial reforms in Israel. Germany, France, and the UK also weighing in. All three countries calling the attacks an act of terror, with Germany's foreign minister warning of the dangers of further violence.
Hamas's terror once again moved the region further away from peace. Through these terror attacks, there is now the incalculable danger of a large regional escalation.
Regional players like Egypt and Saudi Arabia are appealing for calm, calling on both sides to stop the fighting. Before the hostilities erupted, Riyadh was in talks brokered by the U.S. to potentially normalize relations with Israel, with Saudi Arabia pushing for a resolution on the treatment of Palestinians before any deal could be reached. Qatar, which historically has had both financial and political ties to Hamas, says it solely blames Israel, though some experts say Qatar could possibly play a part in future efforts to de-escalate the crisis.
They've improved relations with the Israelis, but they have been very supportive of the Islamists, and I think they want to maintain their ties and contacts with Hamas. They may well come in to play a role.
Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, which is backed by Israel's arch-enemy Iran, praised the attacks, saying it was in contact with Palestinian resistance groups both at home and abroad, adding further concerns that what began with a shocking start could spread into a wider conflict. Salma Abdulaziz, CNN, London.
Now, one of the top questions arising from the Hamas attack on Israel is, how did Hamas plan it without Israel finding out? We'll discuss what appears to be a major intelligence failure with a top Middle East analyst in just a moment.
Sure Max Protein with 30 grams of protein. Those who tried me felt more energy in just 2 weeks. Here, I'll take that.
Ensure Max Protein. 30 grams protein, 1 gram sugar, 25 vitamins and minerals, and nutrients for immune health.
Only the Sleep Number Climate 360 Smart Bed lets you both sleep up to 13 degrees cooler or warmer on either side, and at your ideal level of comfort. Your Sleep Number setting. The all-new Queen Sleep Number C2 Smart Bed is only $880. Sleep next level. Shop now. Only at Sleep Number.
I just found the biggest weight loss hack for y'all. The truth is there is no quick fix, but there is a more effective way to lose weight, and it isn't what you think. It's actually Noom. It's 2 times more effective than doing it on your own. Get started right now by taking the Noom quiz.
Somebody would ask her something and she would just walk right past them because she didn't know they were talking to her.
I just could not hear. I was hesitant to get the hearing aids because of my short hair, but nobody even sees them.
Our nearly invisible hearing aids are just one reason we've been the brand leader for over 75 years.
When I finally could hear for the first time, I could hear everything.
Try Miracle Ear hearing aids with no commitment during our limited time Sounds of Autumn event. Call 1-800-MIRACLE now.
Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds, it's by my doorstep, singing
What if people realize what I did with the bling ring? These kids robbed a bunch of celebrities. Just no fear to go to the next level. We're in this together. Things started unraveling. Everyone's like, Rachel, she was the ringleader. I was told to keep quiet. I couldn't defend myself. What I'm gonna say is my truth.
I'm Jeremy Diamond at the White House, and this is CNN.
Israel's Defense Force says that they're still fighting off militants who stormed Israeli towns in a surprise attack from Gaza on Saturday. Earlier, Israeli authorities said they regained control of a police station in Sderot, which had been seized by Hamas fighters. Israel has also carried out a wave of strikes in Gaza, killing at least 230 people, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. An Israeli official says the attacks by Hamas have so far killed at least 300 Israelis. Joining me now is Natan Sachs. He is director at the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution. Thanks for making the time. When you look at this attack, you have to also look at this apparent failure of intelligence to have a hint that it was coming. What do you make of that?
It's a remarkable failure. It's really one that's second only to the 1973 failure when Egypt and Syria attacked, surprised Israel on the Yom Kippur War. That was 50 years ago, and plus 1 day. This is truly remarkable, and it will have long-term repercussions in the Israeli system, with Israelis demanding answers both from the military, but with time also from the political echelon. We don't have answers yet as to why this happened. Clearly there was a misunderstanding, misconception about Hamas priorities, about the chance that it would try to do something. And we saw far too few soldiers, far too few military personnel in the arena to able to stop some of this infiltration. Clearly a failure.
Yeah. Given the planning that Hamas put into the operation and the extraordinary secrecy that it entailed, keeping it quiet, how prepared then do you think they are for what Israel does next, because you imagine they wouldn't put the preparation into the attack itself without realizing what was coming.
Yes, absolutely. The first strike in these rounds has been very important. Obviously, Hamas knew that they would be now facing a lengthy and difficult fight, and so their leadership, which cares mostly about itself, is probably now hiding deep underground. Nonetheless, it's quite possible that they surprise themselves with the success of their initial attack, and they may find that in some ways it's a Pyrrhic victory. Israel has been awakened into really being willing to take kind of cost and pay a price that it was not in previous rounds. I would not be surprised if this is a very long fight, and if Israel is willing to incur real costs that it did not in the past while entering the Gaza Strip, it may be much more than Hamas intended to fight off.
There was obviously a plan to scoop up hostages, soldiers, but also civilians. That clearly was part of the operation. I mean, do you think that was strategic, as awful as it is, and how big of a prize for Hamas in that regard?
Well, this was the main goal. The whole point was to capture civilians and soldiers with two purposes. The first is they can serve as human shields in the Gaza Strip now. Hamas would hope that they would stop some of the Israeli strikes. And the second, and very important for Hamas, is as bargaining chips in exchanges in the future for prisoners that Israel holds, both from Hamas and Islamic Jihad, the small organization in the Strip. Yahya Sinwar, who's leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, political leader, is himself a former prisoner, as are many of his colleagues in Hamas, and he has vowed many times to try and release other prisoners in Israeli prisons. The key way to do that is via prisoners of war, and in this case, abductees, kidnapped civilians, children even. We saw in the past Israel give back over 1,000 prisoners for one soldier, Gilad Shalit. Now, with dozens of Israelis, children and elderly, Hamas is probably thinking it could get much more than that.
What are your fears when it comes to the potential regional implications, particularly if Hezbollah in Lebanon decides to get involved? No sign of that at the moment.
Yeah, well, Gilad Shalit, whom I just mentioned, when he was abducted in 2006, less than 3 weeks later, we saw Hezbollah in Lebanon join the fight and start the Second Lebanon War, as it's known in Israel, a very bloody war that lasted over 30 days. There's a real danger of that happening again now. Hezbollah has already been pushing the envelope and testing the ground, moving what was deterrent since 2006 and in the past year has been eroding. There's a real chance that they try to join in this fight. Their friends in Iran would certainly like to do this at this point in time. And if that were to happen, I think we could see absolutely horrific images in Lebanon, of course, northern Israel first, but Lebanon would not be spared. I truly hope, for Lebanon's sake, for northern Israel's sake, that Hezbollah is deterred from doing this. We already heard President Biden today speak, without naming Hezbollah, but calling on any other parties hostile to Israel to be very wary of entering the fray. That is the number one threat here, that this is as horrific as it already is, and this was truly horrific 24 hours, that this could get far worse if Hezbollah joins the fight.
But perhaps not the time for domestic politics, but how does this impact Mr. Netanyahu and his governance domestically, but also his regional plans more broadly? It shifts the tension in many ways from his domestic problems, but could his various outreach deals with places like Saudi Arabia be impacted? Because the populations of a lot of those countries, if not the governments, are sympathetic to Palestine.
Yes, absolutely. So Netanyahu has been now had 10 months, very difficult 10 months of domestic unrest, huge protests against his government and against a far-reaching plan that they had to change the balance of power between democratic institutions in the country, threatening Israel's liberal democracy. These huge demonstrations are now all paused for the first time in over 30 weeks. They've been canceled. We've seen all reservists show up for duty. And in that sense, the domestic unrest is put to the side for now. But this kind of day, what Israel saw, the debacle in many ways, is not going to be forgotten by anyone in Israel, and Netanyahu is in charge. And politically speaking, he's in very dire straits if he has a reprieve now to conduct this war, which is widely supported in Israel, obviously. So we're seeing a reprieve in the politics. We've seen both Netanyahu and leaders of the opposition talk about possibly an emergency national unity government, but we're also seeing an Israeli public that is extremely angry at its leadership. The main goal for Netanyahu in recent months has been to try and achieve normalization with Saudi Arabia. That's something that here in Washington, the Biden administration has been very active exploring. It's of course put on hold right now. I'm not sure it's off the table completely. Many people have said it is. I'm not completely sure. We'll have to see after this war ends whether or not it has changed fundamentals in the Saudi-Israeli relationship. That was never based on the love of the Arab world or the Saudi population for Israel. It was based on the interests of the leadership in Saudi Arabia and the desire in Israel to reach a kind of deal. It may be back. In the meantime, of course, here in the United States, we have a political cycle, a political year that may throw a wrench into that. But I would not rule that possibility out quite as quickly yet.
Yeah, wartime unity for now, political fallout perhaps later. Natan Sachs, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come on the program, a look at how the unprecedented surprise attack on Israel unfolded. That's when we come back.
Does someone who threatens Putin's power ever die unintentionally in Russia?
I don't think so. He just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't.
Who is responsible for that image?
I take responsibilities for anything that happens in this city.
How dependent is the government on Elon Musk?
The answer to your question is we are very, very beholden to Elon Musk.
The Source with Caitlin Collins, Monday at 9.
Guys, how frustrating is it to find a great pair of jeans? Too loose there, too long there? Standard jeans use just 2 measurements, and Taylor Custom Jeans use 7 different measurements to give you the perfect fit. Your phone can measure you right now. I'm Taylor on iOS or Android.
Want to pay only $40 per month with Sling TV to watch CNN, HGTV, MSNBC, and your other favorite channels? You can stream it all on Sling, all for just $40 per month. Try Sling today at sling.com/watchnow.
It's raining, it's pouring. During bad weather, driving can become downright dangerous. So the next time a storm is coming, trust Battle Vision Storm. The revolutionary glare reduction glasses that turn your sight bright during bad weather at night or during the day. Watch your ordinary vision become extraordinary.
Wow, it's so clear. It's dusk, but I can really see.
Oh wow, honestly, for how dark it is out here right now, these are incredible.
Battle Vision Storm uses light optimizing lenses that block blue rays, so you see clearly in heavy rain at night or blinding snow during the day. Heavy rain, snow, sleet, or fog can make it impossible to drive. Not with Battle Vision Storm. And they're not just for storms. They turn night to bright, even in perfect weather.
I used to hate driving at night. The traffic lines were hard to see, the lights from oncoming traffic were blinding. I feel so much safer driving in the evenings now.
Blinding sunlight or headlights cut the glare instantly. Dark traffic signs, see them with confidence. Blurry lane markers, turn clear and visible. Wow! Even objects in your side and rear view mirrors are easier to see. And Battle Vision Storm go head-to-head with the toughest conditions. Whether you're driving through smoke-filled air from wildfires, or you're on a boat getting crushed by the sea, and they're guaranteed for life. Get your Battle Vision Storm for only $19.99. But wait, due to rising costs and supply chain shortages, this may be your last chance to get your very own Battle Vision Storm at this low price. There is a strict limit of 4 Battle Vision Storm per order while supplies last. Don't wait, order now.
Call 1-800-513-4717. That's 1-800-513-4717. Or visit BattleVisionStorm.com. So call 1-800-513-4717 now.
Do you ever worry we'll live forever?
No. It's literally never crossed my mind.
What if we live to like 100? That's 35 years of being retired. I don't want to outlive our money, and I've been eating all these stupid chia seeds. I can totally live to be 100. Why do I keep taking such good care of myself?
Since we started working with Empower, we're able to get all our financial questions answered. So we don't have to worry.
So you never?
No, never.
Join 18 million Americans who've taken control of their financial future and empower what's next. Get started today at empower.com.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We only represent mesothelioma victims and their families. Call for a free book.
Call 800-282-4444 or go to mesobook.com.
Welcome back. Israel's Prime Minister is vowing to eliminate Hamas from its stronghold in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu swearing mighty vengeance, as he put it, the day after Hamas militants launched a massive air, rocket and ground assault from Gaza into southern Israel. Israeli officials say more than 1,800 people have been injured in the country, the attack taking Israel's military and its government by complete surprise. And now they're responding in full force. Mr. Netanyahu saying Israel's government has decided to block the supply of electricity, fuel and goods into Gaza, where 2 million people live. Israel vowing to step up its retaliation against Hamas targets. After that day of attacks, at least 300 people are dead in Israel, more than 200 in Gaza so far. The question many people are asking is, how did Israel not see this coming? With some insight, here's the former head of Mossad, Israel's intelligence service.
No, I think this is a unique attack. We've had intelligence failures before, and we've been surprised. But this is the first time that the people from Gaza have been able to penetrate into Israel, deep into Israel. We had no early warning of any kind, and it was a total surprise that war broke out this morning.
More now on how the attack unfolded from CNN's Tom Foreman.
This extraordinary series of attacks began at 6:30 in the morning when Israel was asleep with this massive barrage of rockets flowing out of Gaza. Note that this would be the level at which their most rudimentary rockets could hit, about 6 miles or so. Then you reach out to maybe 25 miles, and their most advanced rockets, the ones that would most seem to rely probably on some technology beyond them, Iran, as many intelligence people would say, would reach up here to Tel Aviv. That's about 45 miles from here. Whatever the placement of them was, though, there were an awful lot of them. We don't have an exact count, but it appears to be in the thousands. That would matter because that would make it easier to overwhelm Israel's missile defense system, the Iron Dome system, and make sure that some got through, even if many were stopped. More importantly, by doing this, all indications are that laid the groundwork for what came next. At 7:40, an hour and 10 minutes later, that's when armed soldiers, fighters, started coming out of Gaza into Israel, some by knocking down walls and barriers here, some coming in by air with powered parachutes, some by boats going around here. This was something, again, that indicated it was a very planned attack, and soon you saw people with rocket launchers and rifles running in the streets. They even went and engaged military bases where you would think they would expect the most opposition. Gives an idea of their degree of planning and competence as they went in to attack the Israelis. And of course, we've seen those videos of the towns that have been raided near that area where we've had reports of people being taken hostage and other people being killed. All of it speaks to this very notion we've been hearing about from the beginning, that this represents a level of planning and execution that is far deeper than what has typically been seen before.
Tom Foreman there. Now, a number of countries around the world are lighting up some of their most famous landmarks in support of Israel. In Berlin, the Israeli flag now projected on the iconic Brandenburg Gate. Chancellor Olaf Scholz posting on social media, quote, in solidarity with Israel. Italy also showing its support, the Israeli flag projected onto the Palazzo Chigi, the official residence of the Prime Minister. And in New York, the spire of the Freedom Tower is lit up in the blue and white of the Israeli flag. Thanks for watching our breaking news coverage, spending part of your day with me. I'm Michael Holmes. Don't go anywhere. My friend and colleague Layla Harak picks up the coverage after the break.
thing. It's making you get an ice bath again.
What do you mean? These straps are mind-blowing. They collect hundreds of data points like HRV and REM sleep, so you know all you need for recovery.
And you are?
I'm an investor in Invesco QQQ, a fund that gives me access to NASDAQ 100 innovations like wearable training, optimization tech.
How long?
I'm done.
Become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ.
I'm okay.
Before investing, carefully read and consider fund objectives, risk, charges, expenses, and more in prospectus at Invesco.com.
Okay, everyone. Our mission is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
I'm gonna walk you through everything I eat in a day.
Not today, sis. Unless you plan on orbiting Earth, you don't need to eat powder for every meal. With Noom, you can still enjoy your favorite food and reach your goal weight. Get started with Noom today.
Question: how's your money management game? I tried spreadsheets, post-it notes, and mental math, but could never keep up with everything. That's why I started Rocket Money, an app to lower bills, find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, and bring your entire financial picture into focus. Download Rocket Money today. Stay 2 nights and get 5,000 bonus points. Book direct at bestwestern.com.
Having diabetes can raise a lot of questions. Like my morning ride. Will it help lower my glucose? With the Freestyle Libre 2 system, you can know where your glucose level is and where it's headed without finger sticks. Know what activities work for you. Manage your diabetes with more confidence and lower your A1C. Ask your doctor about the Freestyle Libre 2 system. It's covered by Medicare for those who qualify. Visit freestylelibre.us/Medicare to learn more.
We're all in this together.
I want to be that hero.
I'm blessed to have you in my life.
Let's talk food. Let's do it.
Food equals togetherness and love.
All for one and one for all.
I've been pulled through time. If what I saw is true, there's nothing to stand between this world and utter destruction. It's up to us to save this place.
Is this crack? Give it.
You're the god of mischief. Always have been. Always will be.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome to our viewers joining us from the United States and all around the world. I'm Layla Rock. It's now 8 a.m. in Israel, where that country is more than 24 hours into the most serious threat to its security in modern memory, perhaps ever. You are looking now at live pictures of Ashkelon as the sun comes up. It's widely expected that a massive Israeli military operation will soon engulf this Palestinian enclave. Hamas video shows a group of militants storming the Gaza border at Erez, crossing on Saturday, one of the most fortified places on the border. Israel confirms a significant number of Israelis, including at least one soldier, have been captured by Hamas militants. The image you're about to see is deeply disturbing. While it shows the motionless body of a hostage being paraded in Gaza in the back of a vehicle. The person's whereabouts and condition are currently unknown. And the Israeli military is warning Palestinian civilians in Gaza to leave their homes immediately because of the military reprisals to come. It's unclear, however, where 2 million civilians are supposed to flee to. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to find Hamas militants wherever they are hiding. He also says Hamas is responsible for the well-being of Israeli hostages and that Israel will settle the score with anyone who harms them.
What happened today has never been seen in Israel, and I will make sure that it does not happen again. The entire government is behind this decision. The IDF will immediately use all its strength to destroy Hamas's capabilities, and we will take mighty vengeance for this black day that they have forced on the state of Israel and its citizens. All of the places which Hamas is deployed, hiding and operating in, that wicked city, we will turn it into an island of ruins. I am telling Gaza's people to leave those places now, because we will take action everywhere.
For more, Neda Bashir joins us now live from London. Neda, where do things stand this very hour?
Well, look, Layla, of course, the focus at this current point in time for the Israel Defense Forces, for the Israeli government, is on regaining control of those areas where Hamas infiltrated yesterday, and of course on rescuing those who have captured civilians as well as soldiers and held captive and hostage within Gaza. Now, overnight and into the early hours of this morning, we have seen a continued exchange of rocket fire, thousands of rockets fired from Gaza into Israel, many of them, of course, intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system, but some, of course, also making landfall. We have seen multiple areas hit, particularly across southern Israel and across Tel Aviv. And in response, there has been fierce fighting, or fierce striking, rather, across Gaza. We have seen fighter jets in the early hours of this morning, once again, targeting Gaza. The IDF says some 400 targets were struck overnight by the IDF in Gaza. They say these are Hamas positions that they are targeting. But of course, as you mentioned there, we heard that warning yesterday from the IDF telling citizens of Gaza to evacuate these areas. This is, of course, almost impossible for Palestinians living in Gaza. This is a tiny enclave which has been under a land, sea and air blockade enforced by Israel since 2007. Now, we heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking yesterday, describing this as what is said to be a long and difficult war, but he also announced that Israel would be cutting off electricity, fuel and other goods supplies to Gaza. The goal here, according to the IDF, to stifle the operations of Hamas, but as you can imagine, this is expected to have severe humanitarian consequences for Palestinians living in Gaza. At this stage, the death toll on both sides is still climbing. At least 300 Israelis killed across this ongoing fighting, at least 200 Palestinians also killed.
And Neda, do we know if there are still areas within Israel where they are still experiencing fighting?
Well, look, Layla, we have seen gun battles going on, continuing overnight. Of course, as we mentioned there, the focus continues to be on trying to regain control of territories where Hamas has infiltrated. We had a briefing from the IDF just a few hours ago. They say that some 29 areas infiltrated by Hamas have been now taken control back by the IDF, by Israeli forces, including in Sderot, where we saw the Israeli police there regaining control of an area which was captured or temporarily taken control of by Hamas fighters. They also say that hundreds of Hamas fighters have now been killed, according to the IDF. And this is, of course, the primary focus for the IDF at this current point in time. We heard from Benjamin Netanyahu describing this as the first phase, the first focus for the IDF, of what is said to be the next phase, which, according to the Prime Minister, will be taking hold over the coming hours, will be the military response. According to Netanyahu, they are already working on their offensive preparations, and that is said to be the upcoming focus for the IDF, for the Israeli government.
And a final question for you, Anita, before I let you go. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting on the crisis. Are there any diplomatic efforts underway that we know of?
Absolutely. It's certainly on the regional front. We have seen messages and statements coming out from allies on both sides who have put forward their hand to support in efforts to de-escalate tensions between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We've seen Turkey coming out to say that they are in intensive talks with both sides of the conflict and are ready to help with any efforts to de-escalate the conflict. Egypt, of course, a crucial player in this conflict. It has been for decades now. We've heard from the foreign minister, Samah Shukri, who has said he is holding talks continually with officials on both sides, particularly on the Palestinian side as well, again ready to support in efforts to de-escalate tensions. And of course, on the US side, we've heard from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He has been speaking to officials on the Israeli side continuously, but also has spoken to the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, as well as the King of Jordan, King Abdullah II, another key player in this conflict, all in efforts to try and de-escalate tensions before they get any worse. Now, of course, we are expecting that UN Security Council meeting to be held today. This will be the primary and sole focus of that meeting. Across the globe, we have seen statements from world leaders not only condemning the violence, but also, of course, calling for an urgent de-escalation of the violence that we are seeing on both sides.
All right, Nada Bashir, thank you so much for that update. We'll check in with you a little later this hour. For now, thank you. And we're just now receiving reports that Israeli artillery has fired on positions inside Lebanon. The Israeli military says it was in response to a shooting from across the border. It is unclear what was fired from Lebanon towards Israel. It marks the first time since this crisis unfolded 24 hours ago that it has spread now beyond Israel's border. All right, I want to welcome now Yohanan Plesner, the president of the Israel Democracy Institute. He's a former member of Israel's Knesset for the Kadima party. Good day, sir. Prime Minister Netanyahu has warned that the war against Hamas will take time and it will be hard. Is the Prime Minister preparing the Israeli people for a prolonged conflict?
Yes, it will take time. Israel just experienced yesterday a horrific day. This is the Israeli equivalent of our 9/11. In the early morning, Saturday, barbaric Hamas terrorists attacked dozens of Israeli villages and towns and killed mothers and kids and grandmothers and has taken dozens of them hostages. Israel now needs to, first of all, defend its population and exact a very dear price from Hamas. The extremists throughout the region are observing very closely and want to understand what will transpire. And Israel, alongside with its ally, obviously the United States, needs to demonstrate that those who kill innocent civilians unprovoked are going to pay a dear price for that. And of course, this will take time. Hamas is perpetrating war crimes and situating all its capabilities within its own civilian population. So there will be civilian casualties in order to erode, undermine, and destroy the Hamas capabilities. And it's going to be tough and long, but Israelis across the spectrum are united and understand that it's absolutely essential if we want to remain strong and powerful in this region.
Strong and powerful, but I mean, is it worth all the collateral damage in terms of are you prepared to accept all the civilian casualties that come with such a protracted conflict?
Look,
is that acceptable?
There's no other option. Israelis were stormed and with hundreds of terrorists attacking all of our towns and villages, brutally assassinating Israelis, taking dozens of captives, including torturing young girls, young boys, grandmothers, Holocaust survivors. I mean, this is a brutal attack. We were surprised, and now we have to take the initiative. We have to obviously ensure that our hostages are being released and that the Hamas capabilities are eroded in a way that they won't be able to perpetrate such violent and barbaric acts for many years.
Do Israelis still have confidence in their government and in its ability to keep them safe?
Look, no doubt that now Israel needs a national unity government. We had our own internal differences. I've been on CNN speaking about our differences around Israeli democracy. But on Israeli security and on the fact that Hamas has a clear goal of annihilating and destroying the state of Israel. And on that, we're all united. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is also a scheme. Hamas is obviously strongly supported by Iran that wants to undermine the American-Saudi deal in the region by leading to escalation between Israel and Hamas and making such a deal impossible. So this is probably with Iranian support and part of a broader Iranian scheme, and this needs to be pushed back very strongly with much confidence to make it very clear that the moderate forces in the region will overcome.
Okay, now a final question for you. You know, this is obviously a major, massive security challenge for Israel, and everyone obviously still in the thick of it, and it's too early to tell how all of this will evolve. But let's look long term, if we can. Can you envisage an alternative future, however difficult and incredibly hard things are right now? Because this situation is simply unsustainable.
Yes, you're absolutely right that we have to look into the, describe a future vision and then try to work towards it. A future vision cannot include a barbaric, murderous Hamas regime just on Israel's back door. It's not, somewhere on the other side of the ocean. It's just on our backyard, a barbaric regime that has a clear, defined, explicit goal of annihilating the state of Israel. And yesterday they actually tried to implement it de facto. So any future vision includes a leadership of the Palestinians in Gaza, about 2 million Palestinians. That is not a leadership that wants to murder Jews and Israelis, but a leadership that has some kind of a vision of coexistence. And then, of course, we can live in peace together.
Coexistence. Yohanan Plessner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And an Israeli mother who says she was on the phone with her children when militants broke into their home, kidnapped them, described the terrorizing moments. Here's what she told our Jake Tapper.
On 6:30 in the morning, we all woke up to the red alert that we all unfortunately used to. Since I was away, they were alone on the security room, and unfortunately they used to that as well. They were with me on the phone, and by about 8 o'clock in the morning, they said they are starting to hear shooting, gun shooting outside.
They heard gunshots outside.
Yeah. And I started getting messages, texts from other people telling that terrorists are walking around free and trying to break in and get into houses. And about 8:30, they heard the door break. They said someone was breaking the door. They were scared to death. I can't even imagine what they felt. And I wasn't there to help. I was on the phone. And I said, just be quiet, stay quiet, and stay in the security room and lock the door. But the doors don't really lock. They're not meant to give a solution to that kind of situation. No one ever thought terrorists would walk down freely now with places. At about 8:45, I heard online on the phone the door break. I heard terrorists speaking in Arabic to my teenagers, and the youngest saying to them, I'm too young to go there. They were 16 and 12, so it was very, very hard to hear. And the phone went off, the line went off. That was the last time I heard from them. Yeah. It was a very, very hard day. Many, many people from our place and from other places were taken. They took babies, they took 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, mothers, just innocent citizens who did nothing wrong. They were just sleeping in their bed. I mean, even war has rules. They just don't have any morals. They just, it's something that you don't do.
I can't imagine what I would be going through.
What I'm going through, you know, what I'm worried about is what they're going through.
Yeah.
I don't know if they eat. I don't know if they have something to drink. I don't know if they're together. I don't know if they're apart. I don't know if they're dressed. I don't know if they're tortured. I don't know anything.
Has anyone from the military or the government come by to say anything, to talk to any of you? No?
Well, no, but I can't really blame anyone. It was a very, very difficult day in Israel. I mean, hundreds died, thousands wounded, and probably hundreds taken and kidnapped to Gaza Strip. We don't really know how many. It's a very, very hard day. So it's going to take, it's obviously taking time to get to all the people and to have everything reorganized in some way.
An Israeli mother there speaking with our Jake Tapper, describing the moments that militants kidnapped her children. Still to come, the U.S. vowing unwavering support for Israel as the country grapples with the unprecedented surprise attack from Hamas. Details ahead.
Ready? Is Ukraine going to win this war?
We bring the stories that matter to the masses.
This is a reminder of the violence that faces migrants.
These are issues that affect so many people around the world.
This right here is confidence in a bottle.
Not only does it change you on the outside, but something on the inside, knowing that you're looking better.
Makes me feel so much more confident than I've ever felt in my life.
They are some of the hottest videos on social media. Those videos claiming to instantly get rid of bags under your eyes. Well, today we're going to see one for ourselves and let you be the judge. It's called Plexiderm, and lifestyle expert Annette Figueroa is here to tell us why she says this one is for real.
This one is for real, and I'm so excited. We even have a video, and you'll notice the model has bags underneath his eyes and some sagging, and all he uses is a small amount on a clean, dry face, and that's how easy it is.
All right, what's the active ingredient?
Okay, so it's silicates that are minerals found in shale rock, and what it does is it tightens and lifts the appearance of bags underneath your eyes in as little as 10 minutes, no prescriptions, and very little effort. Even watching the video, this is a real it's a model, but it's a real guy with real bags underneath his eyes.
My real true opinion is holy words I can't say on camera. This is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I could feel it just lifting my skin. It was amazing. It feels good. Feels great. Looks even better.
And I did this to my father. We were at home, so we applied it to his under eye bags, and let me tell you, we were so excited. In under 10 minutes, they visibly disappeared from view, and now it is literally part of both of our daily routines. He calls me every single month saying, "Hey, Annette, I'm out of Plexiderm, please send me more." And not only does it work on the bags, it works on the appearance of crow's feet, fine lines, and wrinkles. The way you want to do it is you want to have a clean, dry face. Use a small amount because it's so powerful. You have high school reunions, you have events you want to go to, you want to look years younger, this is it.
At our $14.95 price, it's the best way to try Plexiderm and see it work for yourself after your first application. Your solution is at plexidermtrial.com or call the number on your screen.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to destroy the Palestinian militant group Hamas after its fighters invaded Israel from Gaza and killed hundreds of Israelis. The IDF says it has already struck 426 targets inside Gaza, including 10 towers used by Hamas. And it says tens of thousands of soldiers are operating on the ground around Gaza. Israeli sources say up to 1,000 Hamas militants breached the barrier separating Gaza from Israel Saturday morning and began attacking Israeli towns. And the IDF says fighting to get them out is still going on in 8 locations. And we're now seeing disturbing video of one of those attacks. You can see people here trying to escape, apparently from Hamas fighters, and hear the sound of gunfire. Well, meanwhile, Washington could announce new assistance for Israel as early as Sunday. That's according to U.S. officials who say the two countries are already talking about what kind of aid Israel needs. Military aid was the subject of a phone call between President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday. Kayla Tauschi has more.
The White House is working around the clock to understand the scope of Israel's needs as it responds to these attacks, which the U.S. is calling appalling and unprecedented. A senior administration official says the focus of the U.S. is in assisting to keep the violence contained at this stage, and that there are conversations happening up and down the military chain to deliver direct support to Israel, which I'm told by sources Prime Minister Netanyahu directly asked President Biden for in a phone call that the two leaders held on Saturday. Officials have acknowledged that the lack of a Speaker of the House of Representatives in the U.S. and a permanent U.S. ambassador to Israel are unique challenges at this moment as the U.S. tries to get support in a timely and fulsome manner to Israel. But President Biden says that support from the U.S. is rock solid and unwavering.
The United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas, just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop.
While Biden did not specify the target of that particular message, U.S. officials have been clear in Iran's role as a longtime sponsor of Hamas, but when asked whether they believed that Iran was behind the Hamas attacks in recent days, the U.S. said that they could not yet draw that conclusion. Kayla Tauschi, CNN, the White House.
So much more to come on the dramatic escalation of violence in the Mideast, how America's top diplomat is trying to rally international support behind Israel in a time of war.
For centuries, the world's best pizza has been baked in ovens made of stone, but you can't put one of those on the countertop in your home. Introducing Paisano, the authentic pizza oven by Granite Stone. Now make the world's most delicious pizza with real stone right in your own home. You'll simply set it and let it. Make golden, crispy, extra cheesy stone-baked pies in under 6 minutes. The secret is the dual-controlled heat zones that quickly heat the real ceramic stone up to 800 degrees while melting the cheese and crisping the crust so you can stone-bake just like the pros in under 6 minutes. Look, take any pizza dough, sauce, add your favorite toppings, and you're making gourmet pizza with Paisano. You can even watch the pies rise through the window. Thin or thick, your pizza comes out crispy and quick. Even stone-baked, better-tasting frozen pies in a fraction of the time. You can even make a s'mores dessert pizza. Plus, there's no gas, wood, or charcoal needed. Paisano is electric, plug-in, and portable. Great for tailgating and RV. Look, you'd expect to pay over $500 for a professional pizza oven, but during this special TV introduction, you can get your Paisano pizza oven at a price so low you can't say no. Just 4 easy payments of $49.99. And for everyone who orders today, we're going to drop one payment. You get it all for just 3 easy payments of $49.99. Paisano comes with a 10-year warranty, plus these professional pizza peels and the authentic pizza recipe guide. Yours absolutely free. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free. For the best pizza in the world, it's P-I-E-Z-A-N-O. Paisano. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-694-8702. That's 1-800-694-8702, or order online at buypaisano.com. Call now.
Israel at war. CNN brings you unparalleled coverage.
Following major breaking news
on the ground. With the latest developments.
The sirens have gone off. People are taking cover.
For continuing coverage, stay with CNN.
From the moment you touch down in Victoria, you'll know you're in a world apart. This is a place like no other. Let your curiosity lead you through unforgettable moments, where you're connected to nature, each other, and a local culture full of creativity and history that welcomes everyone. Your story unfolds in Victoria.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Here's an amazing fact. 1 in 3 African American blood donors is a match for a person living with sickle cell disease. Could be me, could be you. We can help save lives. Visit redcrossblood.org/ourblood to make your appointment to donate today.
This is CNN, the world's news network.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the country is embarking on a long and difficult war to destroy the military and governmental capabilities of Hamas. His remarks come after militants from Gaza launched a surprise attack on Israel Saturday, hitting multiple targets with a barrage of rockets. Israeli officials say up to 1,000 Hamas fighters stormed into communities near Gaza and captured a significant number of civilians. Well, this video appears to show one woman being forced into the back seat of a car with her hands tied behind her back. While European leaders and others around the world are reacting to the Hamas attack on Israel, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke on the phone to Israeli President Isaac Herzog. She offered the EU's full support and posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the EU mourns the victims and stands by Israel's right to defend itself. Neda Bashir is standing by in London. Good to have you back with us, Neda. A message of support from the European Union. What have been the regional reactions?
Well, we have seen across the board in the region condemnation of violence across both sides. We have seen efforts by the likes of Turkey and Egypt, or offers rather, to help mediate and also to de-escalate the tensions between both sides. The Turkish government says it is holding intensive talks with both the Palestinian and Israeli side. It is standing ready to help to de-escalate those tensions. Meanwhile, Egypt, a key regional player and a key player in this conflict, it has been for decades now. The foreign minister there, Sameh Shoukry, has said that he is again holding talks with both sides, speaking to the Palestinian Authority, and is ready to offer support when it comes to trying to de-escalate the tensions there. But of course we have also heard some criticism, some condemnation from regional players when it comes to Israel's actions. Let me just read you a quick bit from this statement from Qatar. They say the Ministry of Foreign Affairs held Israel solely responsible for the ongoing escalation due to its continuous violations of the rights of the Palestinian people, including the recent repeated incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under the protection of the Israeli police. Now, of course, this continues to be a huge concern for the international community. As you mentioned there, we have had strong condemnation from EU leaders. We've heard from the EU's Foreign Affairs Chief, Josep Borrell, reaffirming the EU's support for Israel and condemning the violence that we have seen. We know, of course, that this will be a key focus today for the UN Security Council, where we are expecting to hear, of course, those condemnations of violence. We have seen overnight the continued use of rockets being launched into Israeli territory, as well as rockets being launched by Israel into Gaza. Now, of course, the concern is really shifting to how this will play out on the military front. We know, of course, that Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to have a strong military response. He spoke of the first phase of this response from Israel being focused on trying to regain and recapture control of territories infiltrated by Hamas and trying to rescue those held captive by Hamas in Gaza, including civilians and soldiers. But the next phase, which he has said will set to begin in the coming hours, will be focused on that military response. And in his words, they are preparing their offensive positions at this current point in time. So it is anticipated that there will be a strong military response in Gaza. Netanyahu has also said that the Israeli cabinet has now decided to cut off electricity, fuel, and other goods supplied to Gaza. The aim, the goal here, and the intention to stifle the operations of Hamas, but this is of course going to have a severe humanitarian consequence for those Palestinians living in Gaza, particularly as Gaza has been under a land, air and sea blockade enforced by Israel since 2007. Leila?
And so a lot of uncertainty and insecurity for both Israelis and people in Gaza in the coming hours, days and potentially months.
Absolutely, and the focus really for the international community will be on trying to de-escalate those tensions in order to ensure that this does not get any worse. But we've heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu describing this as a long and difficult war ahead for Israel, and it is anticipated that that response will be fierce. Overnight and into the early hours of this morning, we have seen Israeli fighter jets continuing to strike targets in Gaza. They say some 400 targets have been struck by the IDF in Gaza. And we heard that warning yesterday from IDF officials telling citizens in Gaza to evacuate, but of course that is almost impossible for many of them given the ongoing blockade. This is a tiny enclave, densely populated, so that is almost impossible for many Palestinians there. But of course we are still seeing gun battles taking place across territories in Israel as well, particularly in the southern areas where we have seen that intense fighting continuing overnight. Israeli officials have said that sadly dozens of lives have already been lost, and of course there is a huge amount of concern for those Israeli citizens who have been held captive and taken hostage in Gaza. That continues to be a priority for the Israeli government. But as we continue to see this exchange of rocket fire, both from within Gaza into Israel, many of them intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system, but of course many also making landfall, hitting targets and inflicting a civilian casualty. We are also seeing the response continue targeting of areas in Gaza. We saw several high rises targeted on Saturday, and that is expected to continue today. The death toll at this current point in time is still continuing to rise. At least 300 Israelis killed and more than 200 Palestinians killed. Leila?
Leila Bashir, thank you so much for that update. We'll check in with you a little later again. Now, in the meantime, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been speaking to counterparts in Europe and also in the Middle East, demanding that Hamas, quote, immediately halts its attack on Israel. According to a spokesperson, Blinken reached out to foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, Turkey, and European allies. Foreign ministers of those European countries have condemned the Hamas attack. And as for the Qatari government, it said Israel is solely responsible for the ongoing escalation due to its continuous violations of the rights of the Palestinian people. Michael Moran is a lecturer in political risk at the Corbett School of International Affairs at the University of Denver, and he joins me now from Denver, Colorado. Thank you so much for staying up for us. Greatly appreciated, Michael. The U.S., has been trying to pivot away from the region, from the Mideast now for years. This crisis, what kind of test does it present to the Biden administration?
Well, it's a pretty stern test. The payback for getting deeply involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in terms of being a mediator has been pretty minimal. There's been stop-start opportunities for every president to get involved. Some of them, Bill Clinton, for instance, kind of put a great deal of energy into it. At the end of the day, these things tend to come to naught. Right now, what we're seeing, I think, is absolute frustration on the part of the Palestinians. Hamas has taken advantage of that and basically trying to send the message that you cannot talk about Middle East issues without paying attention to the Palestinian issue. Of course, we've been seeing conversations between Washington, Israel, and Saudi Arabia about the possibility of Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel. That would be a huge breakthrough. But the Saudis have been very cautious about it even before this, saying that some kind of progress in the Palestinian issue needed to be made. This is Hamas saying this isn't going to happen, essentially. Hamas is kind of trying to play a trump card here and say this is not we're not going to be left out. This is something, and in some ways it harkens back to the way the Palestinian Liberation Organization tried to get its issue on the agenda in the 70s through these really horrible and spectacular terrorist attacks around the world. So ultimately you're seeing the result of this issue being ignored for years, Israel kind of feeling like they could get away with ignoring it, and now this has come back to haunt them.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. The U.S., by putting the focus on the so-called Abraham Accords, and also trying to get this normalization deal through with Saudi and Israel, while at the same time completely disengaging from the core issue, that intractable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Has U.S. diplomacy failed in the region?
Well, yeah, I think there's been a assessment that, and this goes back really to the Obama administration, every administration since George W. Bush, that there's really no payback here. It's a dead end. That you can waste a lot of time and political capital trying to get these two sides to talk to each other, but at the end of the day, neither side really acts in good faith. And that each side is so divided over its own stance that it just turns out to be impossible to get them to the table and then to commit to something. You'll remember the Oslo Accords in the late 90s were destroyed by a series of terrorist attacks, essentially, that just destroyed the political will on the Israeli side to continue, and the Palestinians, who had a chance to grasp statehood at that point, just really mishandled their stance as well. So the leadership on both sides has been really self-interested, overly cautious, and not willing to take risks and stand and really kind of stick into it for the long run through the difficulties that are inevitable. There are going to be people who try to destroy any effort for peace here.
Well, we're at the beginning of this deepening crisis that is, unfolding as we speak. Who can broker a ceasefire?
It's interesting, and it goes back to the question of whether the United States has kind of dropped the ball here. The U.S. influence in the Middle East is drastically diminished since the Iraq War and the kind of sad end of the Afghan war that just essentially looks like futility, decades of futility, especially from the standpoint of the Middle East. They don't have the leverage they used to. Happily, the Russians are otherwise engaged. I think this kind of benefits the Russians because it takes a little bit of attention off of what they're doing in Ukraine right now. But the likely mediators here, Turkey's a really good example of a country that could step in, has relations to some extent with both sides. The Israelis aren't particularly happy to think that the Turks would be the mediator. The Chinese are inevitably going to put themselves forward because it's the way they see themselves going right now, that they are becoming a major player globally. But the problem is there really is no player that has the credibility, the military capability, the diplomatic leverage that the U.S. had prior to the Iraq War and the distraction that created from this issue.
All right, Michael Moran, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your perspectives.
Thank you, Leah.
And we'll be right back.
Stanley Steamer is proud to clean over 1 million homes across America every year. With custom-made vans and cleaning equipment, our professional cleaning technicians have the knowledge and skills to get your home cleaner and healthier. Get the best for your home. Schedule a cleaning with your local Stanley Steamer today.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers and 3 vitamins. And new Gold Bond Healing Sensitive, clinically shown to heal and moisturize dry, sensitive skin. Gold Bond.
Hi, I'm Stacy and I've lost 60 pounds on Golo. I decided to try Golo when I had an international flight coming up, and I realized I couldn't fly being the size that I was. My sister-in-law tried Golo and had lost 50 pounds. So I thought I'd give Golo a try. I didn't expect the results I got on Golo. I was hopeful, but I did not expect it to be like this. Golo just makes sense. This plan works.
Change your life at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com.
I brought in Ensure Max Protein with 30 grams of protein.
Those who tried me felt more energy in just 2 weeks. Here, I'll take that.
Ensure Max Protein. 30 grams protein, 1 gram sugar, 25 vitamins and minerals, and nutrients for immune health. With the Freestyle Libre 2 system, know your glucose level and where it's headed without finger sticks. Manage your diabetes with more confidence and lower your A1C. It's covered by Medicare for those who qualify. Ask your doctor about the Freestyle Libre 2 system.
You talk about chaos as if it's me forcing a few votes.
How disappointed are you with the what happened here and Speaker McCarthy?
I thought it was unfair. We don't have a speaker. 8 of our members voted with all the Democrats to oust him.
Republicans struggling to figure out their way forward. What do you think of the chances of your party retaining control of the House next year? So are you running for Speaker? Yeah, what were your conversations like with Trump? You got his endorsement? Manu Raju, CNN, Capitol Hill.
We're being flooded with false information. The more we mindlessly share, the more misinformation threatens us and puts our democracy at risk. But together, we can help protect our communities before it's too late. It's time to check our sources and verify our facts. Let's care before we share.
Download the free app now.
I'm Brent Ingress outside the New York State Courthouse, and this is CNN.
Israel says it's conducting airstrikes in Gaza as it tries to end a massive incursion by Hamas militants. Israeli military says it has conducted more than 400 strikes, including some that toppled multi-story buildings. While Israeli artillery is now pounding targets in Lebanon after alleged shootings across the border. Well, Israel says fighting is underway in at least 8 areas in the south where Israeli troops are trying to push the remaining militants out. Former Israeli Prime Minister and opposition leader Yair Lapid is urging Mr. Netanyahu to put aside their political differences and form an emergency government. In a statement, he said Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that with the current extreme and dysfunctional security cabinet, he cannot manage a war. Israel needs to be led by a professional, experienced, and responsible government. We need to put politics to one side for the sake of an emergency government which will manage this situation with determination and won't deal with anything else until we achieve victory over our enemies. CNN's Nick Robertson is just a few miles from the Gaza border and has the latest.
What we're witnessing here, the first time that we've seen it tonight, is Israeli heavy armor being transported in towards Gaza. That's the road to Gaza, about 2.5 miles, 3 kilometers that way. And these are Israeli battle tanks. I've counted at least 5. There are more trucks transporting them coming around the corner. The night has been very active. Beyond that checkpoint there, that is the area where the Israeli Defense Forces have been contesting with Hamas militants who are still inside Israel. Where we are, this is the area that Israel controls proper. Beyond that, it is still an active military zone. These tanks are being moved into that zone. We've heard helicopter gunships attacking positions on the ground. We've seen special forces moving in and out of the area around here. And we've seen a lot of missiles fired coming out of Gaza by Hamas militants and others, potentially fired out of Gaza and intercepted by Iron Dome defensive missile systems. The Iron Dome's been firing up from over here. The intercept literally happening overhead, and that has happened on multiple occasions. We've been hearing as well Israeli jets flying towards Gaza, and then we've heard explosions, heavy explosions at times, flashes on the horizon through the night. So this is a very dynamic and fluid situation, but this is the first time we are seeing heavy Israeli battle armor moving towards Gaza, perhaps the first steps of future deployments. Nick Robertson, Zakim, Israel.
And with that, we'll be right back.
Does someone who threatens Putin's power ever die unintentionally in Russia?
I don't think so. He just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't.
Who is responsible for that image?
I take responsibilities for anything that happens in this city.
How dependent is the government on Elon Musk?
The answer to your question is we are very, very beholden to Elon Musk.
The Source with Caitlin Collins, Monday at 9.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed? Because only the Sleep Number Climate 360 smart bed lets you each sleep up to 13 degrees cooler or warmer on either side, while you both sleep at your ideal level of firmness, comfort, and support, your Sleep Number setting. And now our all-new next-gen smart beds have temperature benefits, so you sleep better night after night. Now at its lowest price ever, the all-new Queen Sleep Number C2 smart bed is only $880. Sleep next level. Shop for a limited time at Sleep Number.
It's easy to think that all money managers are pretty much the same. But at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different how? You sell high commission investment products, right?
Nope. Fisher avoids them.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Never at Fisher.
Okay, then you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No, we structure our fees so we do better when our clients do better. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
I have type 2 diabetes, but I manage it well. It's a little pill with a big story to tell. I take once daily Jardiance. At each day start, as time went on, it was easy to see. I'm lowering my A1C.
Jardiance works 24/7 in your body to flush out some sugar. And for adults with type 2 diabetes and known heart disease, Jardiance can lower the risk of cardiovascular death too. Jardiance may cause serious side effects including ketoacidosis that may be fatal, dehydration that can lead to a sudden worsening of kidney function, and general use for urinary tract infections. A rare life-threatening bacterial infection in the skin of the perineum could occur. Stop taking Jardiance and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of this infection, ketoacidosis, or an allergic reaction, and don't take it if you're on dialysis. Taking Jardiance with the sulfonylurea or insulin may cause low blood sugar.
Jardiance is really swell, the little pill with the big story to tell.
The cyclone was coming at us from the east. My executive officer went into a panic. He repeatedly tried to order me off the bridge. I told him he was performing a mutinous act.
You felt you had the right to depose a commanding officer on the grounds of mental illness.
Yes. I've had a spotless record up until now. And I was stabbed in the back.
Isn't it obvious that one of you is not telling the truth?
Julian's about to learn that free food is a personal eating trigger.
No, it isn't. Yes, it is.
And that's just a bit of psychology Julian learned from Noom Wave. Sign up now at Noom.com.
Last year, I got stuck paying for my ex's internet for months before I finally caught it. That won't happen this year, thanks to Rocket Money. Rocket Money finds hidden subscriptions, and you can cancel the ones you don't want with one tap. Join Rocket Money today.
Closed captioning brought to you by InVetHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
Israel's defense forces say they have launched strikes into Lebanon after the Lebanese group Hezbollah targeted 3 Israeli sites near the border. Well, this comes as Israel continues to fight off militants from Gaza who stormed Israeli towns in a surprise attack. The IDF says 8 points of engagement remain with the militants inside Israel. Earlier, Israeli authorities said they regained control of a police station in Sderot. Israel has also carried out a wave of strikes in Gaza, killing at least 230 people, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. An Israeli official says the attacks by Hamas have so far killed at least 300 Israelis. An American originally from New Jersey who has now lived in Tel Aviv for years described to CNN's Jake Tapper what it was like when they realized they were under attack.
I've been here for 9 years, and it's by far the worst situation I've ever seen in my life. Just this morning, I'm sure as you heard, it was a Jewish holiday. I'm an Orthodox Jew, so I didn't have my phone on me. I went to the synagogue this morning to go pray, and we were in the middle of dancing, and then all of a sudden an air raid siren came on, a rocket siren. And someone shouted, like, siren, everyone gets to the floor, we all crowded down on the floor. There were a bunch of little kids next to me that were borderline crying, they were hysterical. And then one of the fathers next to me, he's like, okay guys, let's start singing, let's sing together, like try to cheer up the kids a little bit, just to try to help them a bit. Only then, since most of us didn't have our phones on us, we didn't really understand what was going on. And then people started telling us, they told us there was like a situation down south and there's like a war starting. So we went home just to go be near bomb shelters. And then later in the afternoon, a friend of mine came knocking on the door frantically and told me that they called him up for reserves, and they called everybody up for reserves. So I got in my car, drove him over to his base. On the way, I saw tons of road blockings of checkpoints where they're searching every single car looking for terrorists. I saw thousands of reservists lined up trying to go back to base. It was horrible. And then I got home only late tonight after being stuck in all the traffic, and I checked Twitter. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff you see on the news is not the worst of it. On Twitter, a lot of it's not censored, and if you look at it, there's videos going around of people harassing in Gaza a kidnapped little boy who must be like 5 years old.
Yeah, I saw
parading around of almost naked woman who her corpse, like she's covered in blood and clearly dead, and they're parading her around and celebrating and giving out candy and fireworks. The pictures also of old elderly people at bus stops. Sorry, I'm getting very emotional. Elderly people.
Elderly people who were just shot at a bus stop. Yeah, I mean the images are absolutely horrific. Young people who were at a peace festival who were kidnapped and shot.
It's horrible.
I've heard people compare this to Israel's 9/11, and I think people watching around the world maybe don't understand, because Israel is at war quite a bit relative to other countries. But this, I think, just the targeting of civilians so specifically is what's so shocking, and the kidnapping of so many hundreds of civilians.
No, it's horrible. I mean, I didn't really get to read the news so much, but from the headlines I saw, I kind of compared it to a typical war that happens in Israel, but this is by far beyond worse than anything that has ever happened in recent history. It is beyond, like, there's no words to describe it.
A number of countries around the world are lighting up some of their most famous landmarks in support of Israel. In Berlin, the Israeli flag is now projected on the iconic Brandenburg Gate. Chancellor Olaf Scholz posted on social media in solidarity with Israel. Italy is also showing its support for the Israeli flag projected onto the official residence of the Prime Minister. And in New York, the Freedom Tower lit up in the blue and white of the Israeli flag. I'm Leila Harak. I'll be back with more CNN Newsroom after a short break. Do stick around.
Pro-level performance at work and at home. Right now, save $20 on the VG857 battery blower. Real steel. Find yours.
The UPS store is not just a shipping store. We're the shipping store. The Leave the Packing to Us store. The We Understand This is more than a package store. We're the pack it, ship it, guarantee it store. The Peace of Mind store. The right when you need us store. We're the go-to, right around the corner. We ship it all store. The UPS store. Be unstoppable.
Wow. I haven't seen this in forever.
What do you say? Would you want to play catch?
Oh, dude, great. He's always wanted someone to string pro and college football with.
Nice throw, Sling. We should spend more time together. You're gonna be a big string someday, champ.
Sling, the live TV you love. Sling.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
Mommy!
We're all in this together.
I want to be that hero.
I'm blessed to have you in my life.
Let's talk food. Let's do it.
Food equals togetherness and love.
All for one and one for all.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
What does human talent look like?
Just go on Fiverr. See for yourself.
Wow. Imagine working with them.
Yeah, imagine that. Hire a freelancer and take your business to the next level.
I'm Pete Muntine at Reagan National Airport. This is CNN.
Welcome to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and all around the world. I'm Leila Harak. It is now 9 a.m. in Israel, where the crisis that began early Saturday rapidly escalated into war, with staggering death tolls on both sides. At least 300 Israeli deaths are confirmed, and Palestinian authorities say more than 230 people in Gaza have been killed. Thousands more have been wounded, and here's the Israeli Prime Minister on Saturday.
I have ordered an extensive mobilization of reserves and that we return fire of a magnitude that the enemy has not known. The enemy will pay an unprecedented price.
Well, Israel says up to 1,000 Hamas militants poured across the border and into nearby Israeli towns. Disturbing video shows civilians being rounded up in one of them, presumably to be taken to Gaza as hostages. Well, one woman described a terrifying ordeal.
Suddenly, out of nowhere, shots are coming in. They started shooting in every direction, and I took the car keys and just drove and started moving forward to get out of the shots. And at some point, they overtook us. We were overtaken by the shooters. They started shooting at our vehicles. We got out of the vehicles. I didn't keep driving. We took cover.
With us now from Tel Aviv is Yaakov Katz, senior columnist of the Jerusalem Post. Yaakov, good to have you with us. Please talk us through the day. What is happening right now?
Well, right now, Lila, we're the second day of this war that was forced upon us here in Israel with the invasion yesterday of over 1,000 Hamas terrorists into southern Israel, the murderous rampage, I would call it, of what they did throughout Israeli civilian communities, and the abduction now of at least 100 Israelis who have been taken across the border into Gaza. Tens of thousands of soldiers, reservists have been called up. Number of divisions have been deployed down south along the border with Gaza, and all indications are that Israel's preparing for a larger ground offensive and assault into Gaza. Hamas needs to be weakened. Hamas needs to be deterred. Hamas needs to be collapsed and toppled, and needs to pay a severe price for what it did yesterday here in Israel. This is something that's not only unacceptable, but unimaginable, what Israelis went through yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Now, we understand that there are still some areas in Israel where fighting is ongoing. Do you know more about that?
There are still some Hamas terrorists, over 1,000, around 1,000 crossed into Israel yesterday. The Israeli forces, it took hours for Israeli forces to get control of most of those hot spots where the fighting and those gun battles were still taking place. There's still some isolated incidents throughout southern Israel. Most of them have been dealt with and neutralized, but there are still believed to be some Hamas terrorists and gunmen in the area. And there are warnings that are coming out all the time. There was just a warning a few minutes ago of some sort of suspicious aircraft that had taken off from Gaza and was seen somewhere in the south. We know that some terrorists came in yesterday in paragliding parachutes. They also have drones that they use to attack Israeli tanks. This was a coordinated assault by Hamas with some significant capabilities.
Now, what you describe obviously is a country in a state of shock from, still reeling from what has happened less than 24 hours ago, or about 24 hours. I'm just wondering, in terms of what's the mood among people in Israel? Are Israelis, do they still have faith in their government's ability to keep them safe? Because obviously, huge mistakes were made.
Huge mistakes were made. There was a huge intelligence failure. How did Israel not know that this was happening? How did the defensive measures along the border not stop Hamas and its terrorists from crossing into Israel? But at the same time, Lila, Israelis know how to come together. And now is a moment when Israelis need to come together. Last night after the holiday, after the Shabbat, the Sabbath here in Israel, when I took our daughter, who's serving in the IDF, back to a bus to take her back to her base, these are emotional times for all Israelis, but we also understand that this is a time that we have to fight for our country. We do have to come together, and we have to understand that this is a fight for survival. It's a fight that Israelis have known for 75 years, and unfortunately, with terrorist organizations like Hamas in the Gaza Strip, funded by the Iranian Islamic Republic, this is a fight that we will still continue to have to wage in the years to come.
What does this mean for the position of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been embattled in the lead up to this, but obviously, as you just described, I mean, the country is rallying around the government during this very difficult time, but he has some very difficult questions to answer.
They're very difficult questions, from the tactical level of how this happened, the intelligence failure, the whole misconception that Israel had, its policy of containment with Gaza during Netanyahu's 15 years, just in the last 15 years pretty much as prime minister, how that has collapsed and failed, the belief that we could contain the conflict and it wouldn't grow out or escalate in a big way, but here it has, right, and it blew up in our face. But also the distraction. Israelis for the last 8-9 months have been completely distracted with the judicial overhaul that his government was trying to push forward. It saw protests at an unprecedented level. You and I spoke about this a number of times in recent months. And there's no question that we appeared weak. We were ripped apart from within, and our enemies smelled that weakness and took advantage of it. Our hope now is that Israelis will be able to come back together, will be able to defeat this enemy. And also, you know, there were just mortars fired less than an hour ago by Hezbollah, which took responsibility from Lebanon. We have to hope and pray that this doesn't escalate to other fronts, because and that they don't think that they have an opportunity to also take advantage of what's happening right now.
And Yaakov, there's obviously also that substantial hostage situation. I mean, we've seen some terrifying images. How is that playing out? I mean, how are people kind of discussing, that kind of, those terrifying images that we've seen, and just the idea that so many people are now, as we speak, held hostage in Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, let's also just, sharpen the question for a moment, Laila. They didn't just take hostages, soldiers. They took elderly. They took young children. They took families, little babies. They took men, women, young and old. This is not about a military attack. This was about a coordinated assault to murder and kidnap Israeli civilians who are living inside Israel on a peaceful Saturday morning. There's about 100 hostages that have been abducted and taken into the Gaza Strip. The Hamas has been holding for years now a number of bodies of Israeli soldiers as well as a number of Israeli citizens. They use this for cynical purposes to abuse and to manipulate the Israeli population. Once the fighting is over, I think that the Israelis will have to find a way, the government will have to find a way to arrange some sort of swap with Hamas. This is a number that is catastrophic, but is also unimaginable until yesterday that Hamas would be holding on to so many Israelis. And it hurts everyone. I mean, I have friends whose children are missing. I know people who are searching frantically for their children, going hospital to hospital, praying that maybe one of them is wounded and just hasn't contacted, but unfortunately they have been abducted by Hamas in Gaza. This is going to be a painful ordeal for the weeks and months to come.
That is a very harrowing situation that you describe right now. And what are some of the answers provided by the government? How are they publicly saying they want to retrieve these people?
They haven't been talking about that, right? First and foremost, there is this fight that needs to be waged and fought against Hamas. And where we are at this moment on this Sunday morning is the buildup of the forces, the preparation for the Israeli retaliation that is still going to come. There's still rocket fire. So that war is still taking place. I think the possibility of some sort of explanation or plan of what will happen with the abductees is going to take some time to formulate, but the Israeli security services are working on it, right? They're trying to locate, to identify them. They're trying to understand exactly how many have been taken. There's still a fog of war around the exact situation of these people who have been abducted, but that will have to move to the second place. Right now, first and foremost, is to fight and defend the state of Israel.
Yaakov Katz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sina's Neda Bashir, regional reaction to the Hamas assault and Israel's response to it. Neda, what have you been seeing and hearing?
Well, look, Leila, this has really raised alarm bells across the region over the potential for this latest round of violence to escalate even further. We have had from multiple regional leaders calls for the violence to be de-escalated, for tensions to be eased, offers from regional leaders to help to mediate in trying to ease those tensions. Of course, we have heard from the Turkish government. They have put forward their offer to help mediate and ease tensions, the Turkish Foreign Ministry has said that it is holding intensive talks with both sides of the conflict. And we've had a message from the Turkish president yesterday, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Take a listen.
As Turkey, in light of the events that have occurred in Israel this morning, we call on all sides to act with restraint, to stay away from impulsive moves that will heighten the tension further.
Now, of course, the potential for this to escalate further is a huge concern for regional leaders. But there have also been comments, remarks from others in the region placing the responsibility on Israel, some choosing to highlight that this has really come in response to recent acts by the Israeli right-wing government and, of course, the placement of Palestinian rights. Take a listen to this statement from the Saudi Foreign Ministry. They've said that the kingdom is repeating its previous repetitive warnings of the dangers of the situation blowing up as a result of the continuing occupation and depriving the Palestinian people of their legitimate rights. And that message has really been echoed by others. We've had similar sentiments expressed by the Qatari government as well as the Arab League, both of which have said that they are holding the international community responsible for this latest escalation in violence, for failing to respond to actions against the rights of the Palestinian people. But of course, on the other side, we have also heard strong words of condemnation, particularly, of course, from the Egyptian government. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry has urged from both sides to act with the utmost restraint, warning of the dire consequences that an escalation could have, not only for both sides of the conflict, but for the region as a whole. And of course, there is serious concern as the death toll on both sides continues to rise.
Do we know what the situation is right now in Gaza this hour?
Look, Leila, overnight and into the early hours of this morning, we have seen continued rocket fire targeting Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces gave a statement just a little while ago, a brief update. They say that they have targeted some 400 targets. We heard that warning yesterday from the IDF, telling Palestinians living in Gaza to evacuate residential areas which are set to be targeted by the IDF. But of course, that is almost impossible for many Palestinians living in Gaza. This is a densely populated enclave which has been under land, sea and air blockade enforced by the Israeli government since 2007. So there is serious concern, particularly coming from human rights organizations, over the civilian impact that this latest round of violence could have in Gaza. We heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday also saying that they plan to cut off electricity, fuel and goods going into Gaza, an attempt to stifle the operations of Hamas. But this, of course, could also have dire humanitarian consequences.
Nida Bashir reporting. Thank you so much, Nida. Well, in Washington, President Joe Biden says Israel can count on U.S. support as it reacts to the unprecedented attack. Mr. Biden spoke with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the phone on Saturday, telling him the U.S. support will be rock solid and unwavering. He also issued a strong condemnation of the Hamas attack. Take a listen.
Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable.
Well, Mr. Biden also had a warning for Israel's enemies who may want to take advantage of the situation. Here he is.
Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching.
And Israel's allies are speaking out forcefully on social media, condemning the deadly Hamas attacks and affirming Israel's right to defend itself. French President Emmanuel Macron says he spoke with Israel's president and prime minister and stands in solidarity with them. The leaders of Germany, India, the Netherlands, and the UK also expressed shock and support for Israel. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemned Hamas for committing, quote, terrorism in its most despicable form. And Israel is getting support from another country currently embroiled in its own deadly fight.
Israel has every right to protect itself from terror. So does every other state.
And it is very important for the whole world to respond to terror in a united and principled fashion. No support for terrorists. Wherever they aim their missiles and whomever they attack, terrorists must lose.
And coming up, the surprise attack on Israel is a blow to the country's intelligence community. We'll hear from a former CIA operative about why gathering information in the region is so difficult.
You ready? Is Ukraine going to win this war?
We bring stories that matter to the masses.
This is a reminder of the violence that faces migrants.
These are issues that affect so many people around the world.
This is how Tosin lost 33 pounds on Noom weight.
I'm Tosin.
Noom gave her a psychological approach to weight loss.
Noom has taught me how you think about food has such a huge impact on your relationship with it.
Visit Noom.com and start your trial today.
I wish for the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro.
Sean, you mean this one? The one with titanium?
No way I could trade this busted up thing for one.
Maybe stealing wishes from the birthday boy is not your best plan. Switch to Verizon and trade in any iPhone and get the new iPhone 15 Pro on them.
What?
Yep, and on an amazing network.
And I don't have to ruin any more birthday parties.
Yeah, that ship has sailed. Let's go get you that iPhone. Here we go. Come on now.
Trade in any iPhone in any condition for a new iPhone 15 Pro on us. Only on Verizon.
For centuries, the world's best pizza has been baked in ovens made of stone. But you can't put one of those on the countertop in your home. Introducing Paisano, the authentic pizza oven by Granite Stone. Now make the world's most delicious pizza with real stone right in your own home. You'll simply set it and let it. Make golden, crispy, extra cheesy stone-baked pies in under 6 minutes. The secret is the dual-control heat zones that quickly heat the real ceramic stone up to 800 degrees while melting the cheese and crisping the crust so you can stone-bake just like the pros in under 6 minutes. Look, take any pizza dough, sauce, add your favorite toppings, and you're making gourmet pizza with Paisano. You can even watch the pies rise through the window. Thin or thick, your pizza comes out crispy and quick. Even stone-baked, better-tasting frozen pies in a fraction of the time. You can even make a s'mores dessert pizza. Plus, there's no gas, wood, or charcoal needed. Paisano is electric, plug-in, and portable. Great for tailgating and RVing. Look, you'd expect to pay over $500 for a professional pizza oven. But during this special TV introduction, you can get your Paisano pizza oven at a price so low, you can't say no. Just 4 easy payments of $49.99. And for everyone who orders today, we're going to drop one payment. You get it all for just 3 easy payments of $49.99. Paisano comes with a 10-year warranty, plus these professional pizza peels. And the authentic pizza recipe guide. Yours absolutely free. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free. For the best pizza in the world, it's P-I-E-Z-A-N-O. Paisano. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-694-8702. That's 1-800-694-8702 or order online at buypaisano.com. Call now.
After Advil.
Let's dive in.
What about your back?
It's fine!
Before Advil. Advil Dual Action fights pain 2 ways. Advil targets pain at the source. Acetaminophen blocks pain signals. Advil Dual Action.
Israel has continued to carry out strikes in Gaza a day after Hamas militants launched a surprise attack from that area. Israeli forces say they've hit more than 400 targets, including 10 towers used by Hamas. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the strikes have killed more than 250 people in the area. Well, for its part, Israel says at least 300 of its citizens have died in the attacks launched by Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pledging to eliminate the militants, saying his country faces a long and difficult war. An Israeli mother who says she was on the phone with her children when militants broke into their home and kidnapped them, describing the terrorizing moments. Here's what she told our Jake Tapper.
I started getting messages, texts from other people telling that terrorists are walking around free and trying to break in and get into houses. And about 8:30, they heard the door break. They said someone was breaking the door, someone was breaking the door. They were scared to death. I can't even imagine what they felt. And I wasn't there to help. I was on the phone, and I said, just be quiet, stay quiet, stay in the security room and lock the door. But the doors don't really lock. They're not meant to. They're not meant to give a solution to that kind of situation. No one else thought terrorists would walk down freely in our places. At about 8:45, I heard online on the phone the door break. I heard terrorists speaking in Arabic to my teenagers, and the youngest saying to them, I'm too young to go there. They're 16 and 12, so it was very, very hard to hear. And the phone went off, the line went off. That was the last time I heard from them. Yeah. It was a very, very hard day. Many, many people from our place and from other places were taken. They took babies, they took 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, mothers, just innocent citizens that did nothing wrong. They were just sleeping in their beds. I mean, even war has rules. They just don't have any morals. They just, it's something that you don't do.
Gut-wrenching testimony there. Israel Defense Forces know there is going to be a lot of work ahead of them to figure out how the attacks caught them so badly off guard. Earlier, former CIA operative Bob Baer spoke with CNN's Jim Sciutto, and they discussed the complexities of intelligence gathering in this extremely intense region.
Well, that's something that you don't do. 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 No, 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 you don't do. You don't do. That's something that 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 you don't do. No, 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 you don't do.
Gaza is like a prison with, Israelis can't get in, and they can't recruit people, and the military command doesn't leave. It's a very, very hard target, and that's why they got away with this attack.
Is it possible that that played into this as well, that forces were focused elsewhere?
Oh, exactly. The West Bank is a lot easier to hit. I've walked through those targets the Israelis have hit before, and they can get into the West Bank anywhere they want, into the refugee camps, into built-up areas, but they can't get into Gaza, which is a huge problem. Netanyahu now is sending his forces in because they're very narrow alleys. A lot of these hostages are going to be held in these apartment buildings, and it's going to be a slog getting through Gaza. And not only that, is there's no safe way to rescue these hostages. And trust me, that's foremost on Netanyahu's mind. what's on his mind. I mean, the IDF cannot rescue these hostages safely. And they're going to tell Netanyahu, listen, we can go in what's called combat entries. We come in with a lot of force, and we're going to kill a lot of people, and probably the hostages, and there's no way around that. And so it's up to him to decide whether to negotiate, which would be a political failure for Netanyahu of incredible dimensions, or go into Gaza full force. But it's a city, it's basically one large city. It's 2.3 million people that you're going to have to fight through. There's no easy outs on this.
And coming up on CNN Newsroom, the eyes of the world are now on Hamas and their brazen, bloody attack on Israel. Many are asking, what could they possibly hope to accomplish long term? We'll ask an expert ahead.
Social media.